A very good evening to all our viewers. I hope all of you are safe during this pandemic. I'm Anant Kamath and I have with me Mr. Yogesh Mukashi, who will be the host for today's webinar. Hi, Yogesh.
Hello, Anand. I hope all of you staying safe. Uh, to help you pass time on a Sunday evening, we bring to you this brilliant program. Just keep watching.
We woke up today to a very sad news. YPS honorary member and a beacon of nature conservation, Sri S.G. Neginhal, passed away early today morning. So I request all of viewers for a 1 minute silence in his memory. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Before we start the webinar, here are some key announcements. At the beginning of this year, we had promised a lot of events on the occasion of 50th year of YPS. Now, it gives me an immense pleasure to announce YPS All India Digital Salon 2021, which coincidentally will be the 50th Salon of YPS. We have onboarded a wonderful jury and a very user-friendly website, and it is totally free. It is not any other salon, it is YPS Salon. So I look forward to some wonderful submissions from all the viewers as well as people, the photo enthusiasts all across the nation. In memory of Sri Neginhal, there will be a special prize as well in this YPS Salon, and the details will follow soon. Next Sunday at 5:30 p.m., we will have a talk titled The Golden Hour, and more updates on this will follow soon on the YPS website as well. For any correspondence with YPS or to receive notifications of YPS events, you may contact this number 9513 YPS BLR, which is nothing but 9513 977 257. Then coming to the next slide. To become a YPS member, you can visit the YPS website, which is ypsbengaluru.com, or scan this QR code, which will directly take you to the membership page. You can also take a screenshot of this page and then go directly to the membership page, or also you can revisit this video later so that you can go to the YPS membership page. Yes. So another fact for today is that today we complete exactly 1 year since our first webinar, which we started on 3rd May 2020 with a travelogue on Nepal by Ms. Prema Kakade. Today's webinar would be our 50th webinar. So it is 50, 50, 50, which is 50 years of YPS, 50th YPS Salon, and then 50th webinar as well. You can access all these 50 webinars, including today's, on YouTube as well as Facebook on YPS Bengaluru page. Then, to make this webinar more interesting today, we will be posting different trivia questions about YPS, the Indian Railways. And I would request our viewers to drop in comments with your answers. So, without doing much ado, I will hand over to Yogesh. Over to you, Yogesh.
Anant, I notice a train right behind you. Is that to keep in with today's theme?
Yes, and I literally had to fight with my 4-year-old daughter to borrow her train for this.
Everyone has this their stories about trains in India, especially if you are born prior to 2000, I would think. Everybody has done these long cross-country journeys. So some of them have done shorter journeys. But every train journey was interesting. It was about meeting random strangers and having a chat and getting off, knowing all about their life except their name at the end of the journey. There was like food to be looked forward to at different stations, and each journey was a story in itself. I remember this epic journey we did, a 52-hour journey from Mangalore to Delhi in 1995, passing through some of the most amazing landscapes one could actually go through, and some amazing food along the way. So for me, train journeys have meant a lot of laughter, chat, food, and very, very good memories altogether.
Random conversations with strangers is another fun
Oh,
part.
that is that is something that can't be beaten at all. Uh, and somehow strangers, because they're strangers and they're sure that they'll remain strangers, seem to believe that they can unburden themselves of all their life's woes onto you at that time. So you listen and sympathize, empathize, or just enjoy and have a laugh along with them. And then you get off, and so just another day. So those memories are really. I think you don't make as many memories when you fly, because it is so sterile and not what do you call, people to people is very, very limited interaction. So everybody has these favorite stories about trains, but our today's presenter is a man who has many, many stories, scores of stories about trains. Um, I would, take this opportunity to formally introduce my friend Nandakumar Narasimhan. Nanda, as he is known among friends, lives in Singapore. Nanda was born in Mumbai and spent the first 14 years of his life before coming to Singapore with his dad in 1997. He obtained a degree in environmental engineering from NTU. Nanda has not worked for even a day as an engineer. Please do not ever ask Nanda to prove his engineering credentials, as he's not sure where to look for his degree certificate. He has been working as a photographer since 2009, and that is his first and only job. Nanda was the president of Photographic Society in his university, and he spent more time in the dark room than in the lecture and tutorial rooms. Nanda started off photography with his father's Soviet-era Zenit EM camera back in 1998, and never really shot with a digital camera until 2007. It has always been film cameras for him, and he has remained loyal to film till date. Most of his personal projects, one of which you're going to watch today, are done on film even now. His darkroom reels on Instagram are a must watch. They not only take you through his trials and tribulations in the darkroom, but also educate you on the Western classical musical pieces that are a constant accompaniment to his development work in the darkroom. He credits his move to Singapore as part of the reason he took up photography, as he was in an environment where equipment and dark rooms were far more accessible. He's a fitness enthusiast thanks to his compulsory army training in Singapore. That fitness allows him to walk further, climb higher, and generally do things that allow him to be in a position for his superb photographs. He has survived walking 90 to 100 kilometers a week in the heat of the Rajasthan and Kutch summers, while also surviving temperatures as low as minus 40 degrees Celsius in the winter in the Russian Arctic, and a very balmy minus 30 degrees Celsius in Kyrgyzstan. My sources on the grapevine tell me he is a trained classical singer. His friends who travel with him to make images recount their struggles keeping up with his enthusiasm, perseverance, and dedication to get the image. He is ever ready to rough it out in quest for an image. He has traveled extensively, and he conducts workshops regularly in Singapore for beginners and advanced portraiture workshops too. He has travel workshops in Indonesia, Ladakh and Kutch in India, and in Kyrgyzstan. With this, I hand over the floor to my friend Nandakumar Narasimhan. Nanda, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Yogesh. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Thank you so much for the introduction. No idea how you got to know about the classical singing part, but I guess you've done your investigation. And yeah, it was quite interesting that you all were talking about these, meeting of strangers, because that's basically what the whole series of mine is. I just kept meeting strangers everywhere I went as I did this project. And first, I would like to welcome everybody as well for coming down and tuning in from wherever you are. It's probably nearing your dinner time in some countries. It's past your dinner time in some countries. So either ways, I hope you have made plans, right? And it's going to be quite a bit of photos, and it's going to be you're basically stuck with me for the next hour or so. And yeah, so you're going to have my voiceover about all the images. So just brace yourself, right? And just the slides. Oh yeah, they're up. All right, that's good. And so this is still work in progress, right? It was supposed to be done almost a year back, but we all know what happened. So when I did something similar last year, it was still work in progress. And 1 year later, nothing much has changed. We are still here, and I haven't shot a single additional picture since the last time I presented a set of photos from this project. So that's how the pandemic has created its own set of pains. And so let's get started slowly. All right. And this is gonna be just a set of quotes, random quotes. All right. Not much to do with photography. Basically, things that people told me as I took pictures in different parts of India, in like the far-flung areas, and like the random comments that people made. So the pictures are centered around these comments. All right. So at no point of time are these, I mean, there might be one or two photography related quotes, but other than that, they're nothing philosophical, nothing, no great quotes from great scientists or photographers or philosophers, no such thing. It's just going to be random things that people told me. All right. So the only famous so-called quote is the first one that you see, which says the best camera you have is the one on you. All right. And most people are attributing this to Chase Jarvis. I don't know if it's true, but it seems to be quoted in many areas and it's been attributed to him. So I'm working with this. And that's something I would like to emphasize, because yes, sure, the photos have been taken on a film camera, but there's no excuse for taking a bad photo. Because very often we hear this, right? Oh, this photo doesn't look good because it was taken on a cell phone camera. Well, you know what? It's not the camera, right? So with that, I mean, I'm also showing you a set of pictures. These were shot on an iPhone 7, okay, 4 or 5 years ago, I think, right? And as in the phone is quite old. And a set of pictures that's every time I shot with the camera, I also tried to take pictures with the phone, all right, to get a color version of the black and white photo. So a couple of shots were done in black and white and in using the iPhone as well. And that's the next question which people ask, right? After I shoot with the phone, and they're like, "Oh, the camera you're using, it's like it's like a real camera, right?" So there are like older people that I see in the trains, and they ask me like, "Hey, real camera hai na?" They will ask in Hindi, and I say, "Yeah, it's a real camera." And that's about. There's gonna be just two sections where I'll just banter a little bit, eensy weensy little bit on equipment. That's about it. All right. After that, it's all gonna be pictures, right? So. And the reason this conversation came about is because I was rushing. I missed this train, by the way. I was supposed to shoot it much earlier. All right. So when I saw the train coming over the bridge, I ran with my friend all the way to this bridge. This bridge is in Palia Kalan in Uttar Pradesh, very close to Nepal. And out came this gentleman, this track maintenance gentleman came out, and then he took out his phone and he took a picture. And I lifted my camera. I got a picture as well. In fact, I got a picture of him with the train because I saw him taking a picture of the train. That was quite interesting. So I took a picture. And then he turned around to face me. And then he looked at my camera and said, "This camera looks very old. Like it probably is. It doesn't have the chip inside," he told me. And I said, "Yeah, it doesn't have the chip. It's this real camera." So he knew what sort of a camera it was. And he asked me a very straightforward question. Is like, "Why are you bothering carrying all this? Like you're able to shoot pictures with the phone and I see the pictures right away." And it was a very legitimate question for which I had no answer. And I wanted to give him a combination of like things like, "Oh, you know what, depressed people do this," or things like that. But I decided to just go along with it. And I told him, "Yeah, you're right, but it's enjoyable to take pictures with this camera, right?" So this gentleman was recording these trains because he also knew that these trains will stop running after a while. All right. So there are people who are living there who are recording moments in videos as well as trains. So this gentleman actually takes videos as well. And after which, the camera that he saw was the one on the top. All right. It's called a Pentax 6.7. That's the camera he saw. and when you put it in front of your face, you can't see your face. That's how big it is, right? So obviously he was a bit enamored over it, and he said, yeah, this looks like a very old camera. So that was the camera, and that's the as much as gear information as I can give you for this whole presentation. 2 cameras, more lenses than I have fingers in a hand, but that's about it, right? And the big camera takes the big roll of film that you see on the bottom right hand side, this one here, right? The big camera takes that film, and the small camera takes the small film. All right, all right. In this case, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, and after that, like almost a year later, I post up a photo on Facebook, and this gentleman who happens to be from this area where I took the photo. These photos were taken at a place called Marwad Ranavas. For those of you who can't read Hindi, don't worry, I'll translate it for you. So when I put up this photo on Facebook, the next day he messaged me on Facebook, and he said, "Oh, so which language can I speak to you in?" I said, "Well, you can speak to me in English, Tamil, and Hindi." And he took off in Hindi, and he said, "Oh, those pictures that you put between Marwad and Marwad Ranavas, why are those photos in black and white?" That's his first message. Why aren't they in color? Right. And then I said, well, and then he of course asked another question. He said, is it because the photos are very old? Then I said, well, the photos are only 2 years old, and my camera only had black and white film. I didn't have color film. And then he asked something which stumped me as well. And he said, well, that's fine, but even mobile phones take color photos. What's wrong with your camera, right? And I was like, yeah, you know what? You're absolutely right. All right, what am I doing with my life? Okay, and I thought of it. He was very nice about it, though. At the end, he wrote, "Oh, but it's a good thing that you're shooting with old cameras." I think in his mind, he was probably thinking I'm an idiot, and that's perfectly fine, right? Because obviously his question is legitimate. I couldn't give him a proper answer, but he sort of ended it diplomatically. And then I realized what I wanted to tell him was, look, bro, the pictures are taken in black and white, right? So this picture is a photo of a print, right? You make a darkroom print and you take a picture of it. And then what I want to do to these prints is that I want to be able to color them to make them look like that, right? So when you use oil colors and you go and color your photos, it has this sort of a postcard from the 30s kind of look, like a very old school kind of look. So all the photos I shot in black and white, I make prints of it and I start coloring it with oil colors, right? So what the process takes about 2 to 3 hours per image. And I didn't think that was needed to explain to the gentleman that, oh, this is the whole process. But because I was quite sure he might ask me some other question for which I don't have an answer. And I just decided to leave it there. But yes, with oil colors, you can create some very different feel of an image, whereby you can create this sort of a Technicolor effect and also like a postcard from the 30s kind of effect. So mainly work with Winsor Newton and Marshall's photo oils to get this sort of done, get this sort of thing done, right? So the other question I get asked, like I said, the questions are very random, all right? They're all over the place, okay? So one of the questions I get asked is also, hey, so you're going to build a road here. And some of the photographers might know why you get this question, right? But as a layman, it might be quite confusing. Why are they asking you about building a road? And sometimes they take it a step further. They say, oh, yeah, the politician came and he said that, there will be a road built here to connect me to the railway station from my field itself. And so you're here to make it now. And I was like, well, I wish I was that powerful to be able to make a road all by myself. But I'm sorry, bro, it's not that, all right? And the reason I get asked that question is because of the tripod, right? So when you put the tripod, everybody thinks you're the civil engineer, and if the camera looks funky enough, it's even more likely that you're a civil engineer who's like, doing the leveling measurements and then deciding to embark on this huge construction project, right? So I was asked this question quite often, and in many states as well, right? So they were always asking, oh, you're going to build a road here, are they building a bridge here or something like that? And I'll be like, nah, sorry, bro, sorry to shatter your hopes, but I'm just here to take a picture of the train, right? And of course, I also get unsolicited security services, right? And it's sometimes, I don't know, like it's quite interesting because puppies tend to be more friendly. So they actually come to you, they're okay rubbing themselves against you and making themselves a bit comfortable. For all those comments on the Konkan Railway, it's not Konkan Railway, by the way. This is in a place called Madhya Pradesh, in a place called Kalakund, right? So this is not Konkan Railway, right? But the reason why I'm saying this is because many of the places where these meter gauge trains run, right, there are no roads. Okay, so there are no paved roads that can bring you to the shooting location. Okay, this is a place that's called Gaighat Halt, right, and the village also is called Gaighat. And there are no paved roads that lead you to this village. So you can take a bike. If you're into dirt biking, you can take a bike and you sort of make it to the place. But if you're taking a car, it's actually quite difficult to get to these places, right? So anyone who tells you that every village is accessible, actually, no, there are many villages that don't have proper road access in India. And a lot more than that, there are many villages that don't have electricity as well. And Gaighat Halt is one of those villages where you don't have proper road access. So you actually have to go quite far to get to the railway station. And everybody, I guess that's on their minds, like, I can't get to my home easily. I have to get off at a bus stop like miles away, and then I got to walk. And for the trains as well, it's the same thing. So when I want to access these locations, what happens is, when the train goes by, I first take a ride in the train. And then as the train goes by, I take a look at there are kilometer indicators along the tracks at every 100 meters, or maybe sometimes every 200 meters, right? And then I take a look at the kilometer distance from the station. So for example, this place is in Belraya, and Belraya, these people were playing cricket one day as my train went past, and I saw the kilometer mark. It was something like 215 or something, and then at the Belraya station was 219. So obviously I know I had to walk 4 kilometers, right? So I just walked back 4 kilometers along the track, and I got to these guys the next day. And one of those little prayers I always say, like, although I don't believe in any god as such, but I still say I really hope those guys are playing today, because a lot of times I see something from the train, the next day when I go to capture it, it's not there. All right, it can be anything from cricket match to buffaloes to farmers tilling the land and stuff like that. So in this case, I managed to find the group playing cricket because it was a weekend, and I specifically told them, all right, I'm going to be taking a picture of the train. Just carry on doing whatever you're doing. And it was almost 45 minutes for the train to arrive. I arrived quite early, right? There was 45 minutes left for the train to arrive. But then when the train arrived, these two kids still turned around and looked at the camera. So I was like, why don't you just focus on the game and let me just take my photo? But they insisted on turning around and looking at the camera. And I was like, okay, fine. You know what? That's what you get. And I just walked back to the station after that. So sometimes you have a certain shot in mind, but yeah, fate has its own plans for you. Okay. The other place that I had to walk to was this place called Choridia. This is in between two stations called Patalpani and Mahu. Right, this is in Madhya Pradesh. This line originally went all the way from Akola in Maharashtra all the way to Indore in Madhya Pradesh, and all the way to Ratlam and onwards to Ajmer as well. Right, so this line has been quite long, but now it's truncated to like 50 plus kilometers. Right, so this feature in this village is that they grow potatoes and then they make chips. Right, they make potato chips, and so when you make potato chips, the smell is obnoxious, all right? And it doesn't come from the chips, right? So the process is like this. You grow potatoes, you pluck the potato, you uproot the potatoes, and then you boil them. And after you boil them, you slice them, right? And the water that's left over after boiling the potatoes, that's actually just dumped into like a gully or like a little stream. And then the bacteria takes over and the potato, sort of disintegrates. And then the stench hits you. It is obnoxious. Like everything I studied in my environmental engineering, all the bacteria were working in full form, right? Busy making the methane and other toxic gases that were just totally making my stomach churn. But this gentleman, the owner of the house, who's fist punching the air, right? Punching the air. That gentleman allowed me to shoot from his roof. So I asked him, like, can I take the picture of the train as it passes by? He said, oh yeah, you should. You're like, saving the railways. These lines are so old and all that. And I was like, no, I'm no savior. It's all fully for my own greed. I just want to take some pictures, right? So he allowed me to do that. He allowed me, and then later he brought a cup of tea for me as well. So that was a very touching moment for me, because like I was quite stressed shooting with 2 cameras and doing all kinds of crazy things. And then this gentleman came up and his daughter passed me a cup of tea. And we had a good chat after that. So when you visit a potato farm, make sure you visit it when the crops are still in the soil, because once they boil it to make chips, it's going to smell like really, really bad, right? And it's much easier when you shoot with a wheat field, right? The stench of wheat there's no stench, right? The only thing you got to look out for is snakes. That's why it's a good idea, no matter how intrepid you are, getting a good pair of boots, of trekking boots, is actually a good idea, because when you stand in these areas, there are quite a few snakes, and I have encountered them. Fortunately, none of them took a liking to me, because there's, well, not enough flesh on me to eat, I guess. But I've seen some like swallow frogs and stuff like that. So it's actually, you have to be a bit careful as well. and you're in the middle of a wheat field at just shortly after sunrise, so there's literally no one around. So if something happens to you, good luck to you lah. Okay, so you have to just be a bit more precautious about these things, like wear proper footwear and things like that. So this is in Uttar Pradesh at a place called Nanpara, right? And also quite close to the Nepal border. You see quite a few pictures from this place later on. And of course, the most common question most photographers get when they are seen with a camera and a tripod is, which TV channel are you coming from, right? And and then the next question they also ask is that, oh, is this going to be in the news tonight? Like, which channel is it going to be on? I want to take a look at it. And so most people in the remote parts of India associate a camera and a tripod with either the civil engineer or the news channels, right? And they don't think that the trains that are running day in and day out, they are photography worthy. So there have been at least 2 interactions where I spoke to people and I told them, oh, I'm here to take a picture of the train. And they're like, you've been to Bombay, you've been to Delhi, they have fantastic trains that run on electricity. Why are you photographing this smoky diesel locomotive? These old trains, they're going to be, the word they use is raddikaran, which means they're going to be condemned and discarded. So I kind of tell them that, oh, you know what, this is like a historic line. And there's this sort of a dichotomy in how people see trains, right? The locals in these areas think of it as, oh, these are bad trains. The cities have better trains. Actually, they're not that much better, right? But the Western world, when it sees images from India, when it sees train images from India, right? From the 80s, National Geographic, Steve McCurry photos and all that, generally what they're expecting to see is this, right? They want to see a train that's filled to the brim with roof Romeos, roof riders, overcrowded, slow, right? And trust me, as of now in India, it's not that common. Roof riding is not that common, all right? People don't ride on the roofs that often nowadays because quite a few reasons. In the Indian Railways is under a very big electrification project, right? It's actually electrifying many of the lines. So even in Bombay, if you take a look at the local trains, people generally don't ride on the roofs, right? And because the electricity wire is like 25,000 volts, in the villages, you might see a second class and a top class, like what you see here. In Bombay, if you travel on the roof, you'll go higher than the top class. You'll go straight to heaven class, right? So you probably don't want to be doing that. So there are many, many cities where you won't see roof riding anymore, all right? So you really have to go far off to find these guys, these roof Romeos, right? It's quite difficult. And once in a while, even on the meter gauge lines, like the photo you see here, like if there's a festival in some town, like here, there was a festival, there's a Girnar festival somewhere near Junagadh, and this train was jam-packed, right? But it doesn't happen every day, right? There are a few lines that still have roof Romeos, like the Gwalior line to Shiopur Kala, Dolpur, Tanpur line. You can still see some roof riders. Otherwise, no, most lines, people have started coming down and sitting inside the train, like we expect them to, right? And so on the internet, of course, there are a lot of pictures that make its round, like people are sitting on the locomotive and all that. Many of them are actually from Bangladesh. The photos are actually from Bangladesh during Ramzan, when the people go back from Dhaka to their own villages. That's when trains get jam-packed, right? But in India, it's actually, you really have to go looking for it to find it, right? So the media presents it this way. I don't know, like, with all this pandemic stuff and lockdown stuff, this is a bit making us a bit uneasy. When you see so many people packed together within a confined space, you're like, oh gosh, this is like a recipe for disaster. And but these were taken like 3-4 years ago, so social distancing was not heard of, right? And so when I kept looking at the pictures as I was preparing this presentation, I got a bit uneasy. I was like, yeah, you know what? There's a lot of people on this train, inside and outside, and it just made me a bit uneasy. And it also caused me to get into this bad habit. Like when I see people putting pictures from their gatherings, I start counting people in the photos. Because in Singapore, you have a maximum of 8 people per gathering. You can only gather 8 people and not more. And so every time I see gathering, and it's the same thing here, I started counting the number of people on the roof. And then I said, no, this should stop. This is becoming a disease. So I'm trying to cut down on that, right? So the other stereotype about India is that, oh, India is like, backward, it's old, they have steam locomotives and all that. Actually, no, right? The Indian Railways is one of the most modern rolling stock, all right, in the region. If not, it can compare with many countries in the world, all right. If you exclude like high speed trains and all that, Indian rolling stock is very, very decent. It's more the tracks that prevent the trains from going fast rather than the rolling stock itself, right? Most of our rolling stock can hit 160 kilometers per hour comfortably, right? But it's the track maintenance that doesn't allow it to travel at that speed. So steam engines in India are actually extremely rare. Okay? You really have to be very lucky to see one run on the main line. On a ceremonial run or something like that, you might see like the locomotive Akbar come out from Delhi, go to Rewari or something. But other than that, no, you hardly see steam locomotives. There are only two places where you can see running steam locomotives on a regular basis. One of them is Darjeeling, on the Darjeeling Himalayan Railway, whereby you get this 8-kilometer shuttle to Ghum, which is a bit of a sad story because there are so many jeeps. You cannot take a picture of the steam locomotive without having any of these jeeps coming into the shots. And the other place is down south in Metupalayam, the line to Udagamandalam, to Ooty, right? That has steam locomotives as well. Those are the only continuously running steam locomotives, right? If you want to catch steam locomotives, though, you can see them at various stations splintered outside, or you go to this place. This picture that you see is from Rewari in Haryana, where you can actually go, and sometimes they light up a couple of locomotives just to move them back and forth. That's about it. All right. So steam locomotives are actually quite rare in India. The rolling stock is extremely modern. All right. Up to standard with many developed countries as well. All right. So that stereotypical image needs to change. And of course, the next stereotypical image is this, right? Bicycles, integrated transport, right? Bicycles on trains. No idea why the lady was waving at me, but I waved back at her, right? I told her, "You have a nice day." And the other lady is obviously quite suspicious. She's like, "What the hell are you up to?" Right? And so it was one of those, and also it's one of these pictures that have been made very famous by Steve McCurry and these people. So this, like, yeah, so people are expecting to see this, but this is not that common as we think it is, right? The whole of India is actually pretty modern, right? And then this happened. I started this project on the meter gauge trains in 2016 on a very, very special day. I think most Indians would know what day this is, right? November 8th, 2016, right? Was it November 10th, November 8th or November 10th? I can't remember. One of these 2 days, right? It was a very special date because I withdrew 10,000 rupees from an ATM in Bombay airport, right? At Sahar airport. I withdrew and it gave me crisp new 1,000 rupee notes, brand new. And I was a bit worried because like normally you get 500 rupee notes. So why is it giving me 1,000 rupee notes? I just took it. And I think most Indians know what happened next. At that night itself, there was an announcement made saying that, your 1,000 rupee notes will be invalidated as of now. The currency callback came into effect. And I boarded a train to Akola on that day. And the next day morning, I got to Akola with 10,000 rupees and 1,000 rupee notes, unable to even buy a cup of tea. Right. And this is one of those unfortunate situations. No ATMs, nothing. I was stuck in Akola. And there was one gentleman who kind of took some pity on me and he exchanged some cash for me. I passed him a 1,000 rupee note. He gave me some looser notes so I could buy myself a cup of tea. And so the project didn't start off very well, and to say the least. And when I sat on that train, the first meter gauge train that I took from Akola to Mahu, this gentleman told me that. And he asked me, he got curious. Yeah, he saw my tripod and he said, "Yeah, are you a photographer?" And I said, "Yeah, I am. I'm taking pictures of these trains." And that's the first thing he said. These trains have been orphaned. Look at the platform. It's so far from the main station. Nobody cares about these trains, but this is such an important railway line. You need to go all the way to Indore using this train. And he was right. I mean, it was an important railway line and now it's closed for gauge conversion, right? And so they are a bit orphaned. And just to give you an idea of the scale of I would say it's a mix of progress, a bit of money squandering as well as very, very ill thought of decisions, right? So India embarked on a grand project called the Project Unigauge somewhere in the end of the 90s, right? I think Jafar Sharif was the railway minister then, right? And what happened was that this was the picture on the left was India's meter gauge network as far as late as the 80s and 90s. You still had a majority of these lines running, right? And now what you see is on the right, in fact, lesser than that. That was 2017. So now there are even lesser meter gauge lines. So most of the lines have either been upgraded to broad gauge or they've been abandoned completely, right? And when you upgrade a line to broad gauge, it's not necessarily an upgrade. It's mainly just changing, because you don't get that many more benefits. First, a lot of cost is spent on just destroying the lines and then laying new track. It's a lot of expenditure for little benefits. Okay, so that line that you see on the right, those lines that you see on the right hand side, these little worms that are scrolling all the far-flung areas. One of them is here in Rajasthan between Marwar and Mavli. That used to be a line between Jodhpur and Udaipur, right? The other line, Mahu to Sanawad, which is somewhere near Madhya Pradesh, here in Malwa, right? There's one in Gujarat here, right? This one runs to Sasangir. This is where the only Asiatic lions in the world are found, right? And then you have one in Dudhwa and Katarnia Ghat Wildlife Sanctuary. That's in Uttar Pradesh between Mailani and Baraich, right? And all the way down south, the only meter gauge network train line in India that has steam locomotives running, as well as only meter gauge line that has been given a heritage status by UNESCO, right? That's the Nilgiri Mountain Railway that starts from, those are very long words, by the way, Metupalayam and Udagamandalam, right? So Metupalayam and Uti, right? Just to zoom in a little bit so you can give a better view, right? So even this is actually gone. Places like Jetalsar Dasa is gone, right? It's been converted, or it's undergoing conversion. Mailani to Pilibhit to Shahjahanpur is gone as well. All right. So you only have one line in Uttar Pradesh with a small branch line going to the border with Nepal. I'll show you some pictures from there as well. Right. It's literally time traveling when you take a look at that place. And to one of those things that I always hear the older people say, right? The older railway staff say that, oh, you know what, the railway, the British built the railways and we are not able to build anything like how they build stuff, right? And I mean, politics aside, any colonial or a ruling dynasty or a ruling party or whatever, right? There'll be some good, some bad, right? But railway was definitely something that benefited us, benefited India in the long run. And it is what the station master in Rajasthan said. He's from a place called Kamlighat, and what he said was actually really true, right? Just to let you know, this is a wayside station. This is not even a terminating station, or this is not even a important junction or anything. No, this is just a simple wayside station in Gujarat. There's a place called Amreli, right? It became a terminating station after the subsequent lines were closed down. Otherwise, it's not a terminating station. It's just a small station in the middle of nowhere. And you can see the kind of work that has gone into building this station, the number of beautiful archways and just a fine architecture built of solid stone, right? And for when you enter the station, you feel like you're a king, walking into a royal palace, right? Just to board a small train to Visawadar or somewhere there, some other obscure place. So they actually built stations that were so fantastic. They stood the test of time, like centuries old building that are still going strong. And even more remote stations, right? This is Kasiane station. It barely has enough electricity to run that one fan that you see on the ceiling. That's about as much electricity it has. And the fan only runs like maybe 10 minutes before the train comes. All right. After that, the fans are switched off. The generator is switched off. All right. So they have a DG set that actually allows them to keep the train running. The station electricity running, right? So even those stations, they actually built a nice archway for you to enter and leave. So these picturesque stations that they built on the meter gauge network, you can still see a lot of them, right? And the third facet of the meter gauge railways that totally makes me feel very relaxed are the presence of tall trees at the stations, all right? So one of the things that the railways did back in the British times was that they generally blended the railway stations very well into the surroundings, right? So you'll have very tall trees. The buildings won't look like ghastly structures. Just to give you an idea, this is like a remote station in Uttar Pradesh. It's called Majrapuram. There is another station in Madhya Pradesh which has become like this, right? So when Indian Railways renovates things, it renovates it for the sake of renovating it. All right. They put these ghastly aluminum roofs that just heat up the station. The shelter-giving trees are gone. The coolness of the wind in summer is gone. The hand pumps are gone. And then you get these kind of ghastly metallic structures. It's just upgrading for the sake of upgrading. It actually gets quite swelteringly hot under the zinc roofs or the aluminium roofs that these people put up, right? So sometimes the station blends very well with the surrounding. And the other thing that the British did also really well was they built fantastic bridges, all right? This is actually a sneaky shadow selfie, by the way. You will see me standing somewhere here. That's my shadow right there. Okay, so I had to climb up a water tower because I can't afford a drone, right? So I climbed up on a water tower. That ladder looks suspiciously rusty, but I trusted the engineering and I decided to climb up and I took a picture of this. This is called Hiran Bridge, the bridge over Hiran River, right? The river Hiran, there's a bridge on top. And this is right before Sasangir station. So the station master told me this. He said, this bridge that you see before the station, right? If something were to happen to it that makes it structurally unsound, and that if trains can't run over it for any reason, there is no way we can do anything to fix it, because the materials they used to put the stones together, to keep the mortar used to stick the stones together, we don't know how they made it. So if something happens to this bridge, we literally have to build a new bridge right next to it, while this bridge will just crumble, right? So this is also over a century old, and it has stood the test of time. So we are very fortunate that these things have not crumbled with age. And even in areas like this is in Madhya Pradesh as well. Don't mistake it for Northeast India or the Konkan Railway. This is Madhya Pradesh. This is the line between Kalakund and Patalpani, right? You still have the stone pillars, but the beams have been made into metal, right? So they are metal span, metal girder bridges, right? And if you ever visit this line, do so in the monsoons. It's still running, by the way, right? Once the pandemic issues clear up, they're planning to run a heritage train through this. At least go here for the scenery. It's absolutely beautiful. It gets lush green in monsoon, completely green in monsoon, right? And in winter, it gets completely brown. So it doesn't look that fantastic, right? But it's still really great because there's so much greenery. It just cools you down, right? It calms you down, okay? And this train is the Sanavat passenger, right? You can see two roof Romeos sitting on top. Right. If you look at over the first compartment, there are two guys sitting on top of the coach. Right. So just to let you know, there will be some pictures in color. Right. I shot some pictures on color film as well, just to break the monotony of monochrome. All right. I don't want you all to get into lethargy and get lazy and start sleeping. So I'm going to intersperse it with a few color images just to give you all, make your life a bit more colorful, right? Okay, it's already Monday blues. It's about time we change that, right? And this gentleman in the foreground, my unintended model, but nonetheless a very handsome model, right? His name is Mr. Satnar, and he actually had his whole flock of sheep with him, right? And I told him, look, the train's going to arrive in 4 minutes. Can you just hang around with your sheep? I'll take a picture of you with the train. He said, I can hang around, not a problem at all. But I don't know if my sheep can hang around because they have a mind of their own. They're going to go. And if they go, I can't hold the whole flock together. And if one goes, generally everybody will follow. And I said, well, okay. And 3 minutes later, the sheep were gone. Okay. So when the train came, no sheep. It ended up becoming Mr. Satnar's Facebook cover photo or a selfie of some kind, but it didn't get the job done with the sheep. But I still thought it was an interesting shot. Now, this is one of those bridges that was replaced by the Indian Railways in the 70s. If you have a look at the second pillar, to the left of that second pillar, you'll see a stone pillar that's abandoned, right? That's been demolished partially, right? That's where the original bridge was, but the land was giving way, so they shifted the bridge inwards and built a metal girder bridge on top of that. So if I do go back, I have to pass him this photo, right? And from there, we just go a little bit further into Rajasthan. Rajasthan is, if for those who are not familiar with India, Rajasthan is generally known for its deserts, right? It's not really known for lush green forests. All right, this is more like Northeast India, where it's like one of the wettest places in India, if not the world. But in Rajasthan, it's like one of the driest in that sense, right? But the Aravallis, which is like the frontier between Rajasthan and the southern states of India, the other states of India, these trains run through the Aravallis where there's still a fair bit of rain. And this is in a place called Kachbali, and the bridge is over a river called Kachbali Nala, right? It's like a little stream. And this was built somewhere in the 30s, and it's like a royal railway line between Jodhpur and Udaipur. It's been truncated now, so you can't get from Jodhpur to Udaipur by train in one continuous journey anymore, right? And This place requires a fair bit of walking, though, about 6 kilometers from your drop-off point to get to this location. And this shot was supposed to be done in black and white. For various reasons, it just kept failing every time I was there. All right, it's a long list of sad stories. I'll spare you that on a Sunday evening, right? So when you sit in the train in these areas, now you realize why the meter gauge trains were built and why India chose the meter gauge trains. For those of you who don't know, India has about 4 gauges, all right, excluding the metro gauge, which is like a 1.4, 1.5 meter gauge, right? India has 4 gauges. One is a 610 mm narrow gauge. One is a 750 mm narrow gauge, right? One is a meter gauge, which is the track width is 1 meter apart, and one is the broad gauge, right, which is 1.6 meters apart, right? So now 90+% of India's rail network is broad gauge, 1.6 meters, right? But in some areas, because the slope, the gradient ascent is a bit too steep, 1. 2, the curves on the mountain sides are a bit too sharp, all right? And 3, the passenger traffic doesn't justify having bigger trains. The British government built a lot of meter gauge networks because it was sufficient for the population that it served, 1. 2, the terrain was too treacherous for bigger trains to ply. All right. Now the meter gauge trains are smaller and they are lighter, so they're able to turn sharper and they're able to climb steeper as well. All right. That's one of the reasons why the British chose the meter gauge lines, and that's one of the reasons why these lines still survive, because the turns are sharp, the slopes are steep, and the Indian Railways hasn't found a proper way to move on to the broad gauge, but they are still closing these lines down, which is actually not a very good move at all. Right. And this is also near Mahu, right, in Patal Pani, right? In monsoons, it's just like heaven on earth, lush green, and with this little locomotive, just disrupting the pattern of greens, right? It actually makes for quite a nice place to just chill and have a cup of tea or something like that. Okay. And so what do I mean by a curvy pathway? That building that you see on the top left here, on the center left here, that's Goramghat railway station, right? This train is actually going to that station. Though when you look at it, it looks like it's going away. This train will actually make a U-turn, right? Will make a U-turn and then slowly make its way here. You can see a bit of the track here. This train actually makes a U-turn and then goes to that station. So that's how sharp the turns are. All right, on this line. That's one of the reasons why the meter gauge lines are still very relevant in some places. All right, there's not enough passenger volume to justify bigger trains, and the nature of the terrain lends itself to this type of a railway. So it's quite sad that the railways is just abandoning them without really giving it much thought about how much people benefit from these lines, right? And one of those things that I came across, I mean, it hasn't been a walk in the park by any measure, right? It's not been a walk in the park. Like I told you, when I first started, I had a currency lockdown, a currency callback. And then this gentleman, I put policeman in inverted commas because I really don't know who he is, right? I really don't know who he is, but he had a pistol in a holster when he approached me and threatened to confiscate my gear. And I was like, well, you're either a policeman or some government official who has a lot of power, because it's going to be a bit of a problem. And it's for a very, very, very stupid thing. Okay. I was traveling over that bridge, right? I'm not going to tell you where it is because I have a feeling if that person is watching this show, he might come and look for me and do something to me. Okay. So I'm just going to spare you the location details, or somewhere in India, right? And I was traveling over this bridge. And there's a stream there's a river under this bridge where there were buffaloes bathing, right? And I told myself, I don't care. I want to come here and shoot the buffaloes when the train goes over, because my train went above when the buffaloes were there. So I assumed that the buffaloes come back at the same time the next day to bathe, which they don't, right? And so when I turned up, there was no buffaloes, but I saw these guys like they were extracting sand. And I thought, well, okay, since the buffaloes are not here, let's try to get a shot with the sand. People working with the sand. It was a family. Right. So just before the train came, like 5 seconds before the train came, the family ran away behind me. And I was left with a pile of sand and this little implements here. And I was kind of puzzled, like, why did he run away just before the train came? I mean, he was perfectly okay when I kept my camera and I said, I want to take a picture of the train with you in the foreground, but he ran away. And then the man of the family took a motorbike and he went somewhere. And I was like, well, okay, fine, whatever. I just finished shooting and I was just chilling out, waiting for the next train to come and praying that the buffaloes would come as well. And then this person came with this officer guy who had a pistol in his holster, and he says, oh, get out of this place. You know what? You're not supposed to be taking pictures here. And then I showed him a permit from the railways, and I said, well, you know what, I'm taking pictures of the train with the blessings of the Western Railway. And then he was like, no, this is a national park. You can't take pictures here. Otherwise, I'll confiscate all your gear. And I'm like, bro, if he's going to shoot me and on my gravestone, you're going to put Nanda died because he tried to take a picture of a buffalo, it's going to look very stupid. Come on, man. You can do better than this, right? So I told him, look, I'm just going to take a picture of the bridge. I want the buffaloes in the shot. That's it. He says, no, I'm not going to let you shoot from here. I'm going to take your gear. You better move, right? So my rickshaw driver didn't help. He just like stood and watched the fun, and yeah. So I ended up getting a very, very crappy shot of the buffaloes, because I couldn't go further from the bridge because that's where they were dredging the sand. So I couldn't go. And I realized that I might have had a brief encounter with the sand mafia, right, of some kind, because it is a business in India. I have heard of sand mafias where they actually illegally dredge sand. So I'm assuming I caught hold of one of them unwittingly. So I ended up having to take a very crappy shot, very yeah, the buffaloes are hardly visible. You see more birds than buffaloes, so that the longer lens shot could not work, and I had to make do with this distorted, crazy looking shot. So sometimes it's not been a walk in the park by any measure, right? And but every time I go to these villages, I get this comment, right? And I say that, oh, I was born in Bombay, and then I have some relatives still living back there. And almost most of the males that I talk to, they've been to Bombay, right? They've worked in Bombay. And they will say that, yeah, it's okay to make money, but wow, it's just extremely expensive, and gosh, it's so crowded. And you like, even if I pay 500 rupees, I can't even get like a proper room to myself, and that kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, it is bad. And a lot of them, they don't like working there, right? They just do it because by force, right? And I think now it's probably even more felt when all the migrant workers probably went back to their home states with all these lockdowns and everything. So I really hope things are okay for them, right? Because most of the railway staff I met, they are working in railway stations that hardly see like 8 trains in the whole day, right? Max 8 trains in the whole day, right? Most are about 3 to 4 trains a day. That's about it, right? And this gentleman is the station master of this station in Gujarat called Talala. It's actually in Saurashtra, very close to Sasangiri as well. And his duty only starts at 10 a.m., right? So the first train arrives at 10, but he reaches the station at 8 itself. So his co-workers come in, they bring in like a cup of tea, and then he's sipping tea, he reads the newspaper, and he's chilling out until the first train arrives. So he says, yeah, like, I feel very relaxed here. I don't feel stressed. And I enjoy this job because it's very easy. From 10 to 5 or 10 to 6, he does his job, and then he goes back home. He has his family, and of course, these stations are also like a century old, so they actually make for very nice pictures as well, with all these archways and the light streaming through and stuff like that. The other place is Patal Pani Waterfall. Patal Pani means waters of hell, right? And the reason they say that is because this is in the Malwa area, where the plateau is actually above at ground level, all right, and everything, the water actually falls, like, technically it's falling below ground level. So what happens is that the water is actually going underground. So people say it's Patal Pani, it's like waters of hell. And this place is actually very nice if you just want to just chill by the waterfall and just watch the trains go by. These vendors in the foreground, they sell this thing called corn or maize, right? And they roast it over a charcoal flame, all right? It's probably proven to be like one of the few ways you can get closer to divinity, right? Is to sit in a cold, wet room and just eat one of these charcoal roasted corn laced with chili pepper on like a chili and salt on the with a lemon. Used to dash the chili and the salt, and gosh, it's heaven. Just eat and just watch the trains go by. You can imagine why people like to come back to their hometowns, even though the economic activity there's not much. But after they make their money, everybody wants to come back, right? Even railway officers that work in Bombay, they try to make, like, Bombay is like 600 kilometers from here, right? 500 to 600 kilometers from here. But they make an effort to come back on the weekend just so that they can relax. They'd say they cannot relax in Bombay, right? So that's also the thing, right? So this station master sees 8 trains a day. In Bombay, if you stand at any random station along the local train line, you probably see 8 trains in a minute, or maybe in like 5 minutes, you might already have like so many trains passing by, right? And in the state of Uttar Pradesh, light plays a very nice game with you. Okay, the fog in Uttar Pradesh is legendary, right? It's thick, it cuts visibility, it cuts sound as well. Or I'll tell you a little bit more about this later. But what happens is that when sun shines through fog, it does two things for you, right? Those of you who do studio photography, you'll know what's a softbox. It's this diffusion box in between the light and the subject. The sun and the fog do that for you. The fog diffuses the light. So it's actually very nice to take pictures of people in this light, right? So the light in Uttar Pradesh is godsend. It's one of the best places. You don't even have to go to any tourist locations or anything. Just hang around the fields, look at the trees, and just take pictures. The light is just divine, all right, in winter, okay? And it comes with its own set of paints. I'll cover that at the end, all right? And this was one of those views first thing in the morning when I boarded the train to Nepalganj Road, right? It was, it's this station, right? Nepalganj Road, although it's called Nepalganj Road, it's very much in India. It's about a kilometer from Nepal, maybe like 600 meters from Nepal, right? So, like I was telling you all, it's a bit like time travel. I say this a million times, I guess, but just can't seem to get over it, right? It's a lot like time travel. When you go to these stations, your transport options are like horse cart, cycle rickshaws, right? And then you get things like if when the lady wants to like board the rickshaw, the horse cart with her stuff, and they were like, let the horse finish eating first. Imagine if a rickshaw driver in Bombay did that, and he said, oh wait, let my rickshaw finish eating first or something. Like he's gonna go out of business the next minute, right? Like nobody's gonna take his rickshaw, right? Because people are always in a hustle and bustle. But the lady just waited, and the horse finished eating, and then she boarded and she left, right? So it's a very laid back in a way, and a little bit. And I mean, the railway officers that work here from the cities, they say, oh, this place is so backward, like the people are so backward. They've never seen a modern city and stuff like that. And I don't quite subscribe to that. I'm like, yeah, they're okay with what they have. They definitely deserve better transport, but yeah, the guy makes a living, and that's fine. And this is one of those things, if you do photography, you'll realize that it's actually quite difficult to shoot into the sun, right? If you're facing the sun, chances are people become silhouettes and stuff like that. And that's the other thing with which fog helps you. It diffuses the sun, so you're able to actually keep details in the bright and the dark areas pretty comfortably, because you can see the texture on the horse and you can see the texture on the building. That's something that's possible with diffused light. I discovered this very serendipitously in Uttar Pradesh, of all places, right? And that's the station, right? Just take a look at the tree. Okay, it's huge. It's gonna cover the whole span of the width of the station. That's just one tree, all right? And there's another tree behind. If you just go behind the silhouettized people, there's another tree. That's the whole tree that basically covers the whole platform already. Okay, so every time people say like, oh, these are backward, and they go and replace this with these aluminium roofs. One, you got rid of a century-old tree, which is actually producing oxygen and cleaning up your air for you. Two, yes, sure, the aluminium structures protect you from rain, but not necessarily from the heat. Trees protect you a lot better. Okay, a little bit of interesting information. If you walk about 100, 200 meters behind this train, you will reach Nepal. Okay, so this station is the last station on the frontier with Nepal, and the only functioning station on the frontier with Nepal as of now. Okay, as of now. There are a couple of other lines that are being upgraded to the broad gauge, the one from Jayanagar and Janakpur as well. Those ones are still being upgraded as of now. But this is the only functioning railway station on the frontier with Nepal. And the border is just about 100 meters or 200 meters behind. But please don't saunter into the border. Okay, you will definitely be stopped by the SSB post, which is the Sashastra Seema Bal, the border security force, right? They have an office there. So please don't think you can just gallivant into Nepal and have a good time and come back. They are definitely going to ask you questions, okay? Unless you look local, all right? So it's a very look-based thing. And people tell me like, yeah, just go in, they will go, but then they don't, all right? So the border security force will stop you. So please don't quote me on this and start exploring the frontier on this side, okay? Proceed at your own risk, all right? And so although the stations do see a fair bit of activity, right? Some of the stations get really crowded. Like this is Bichia station. This is also quite close to Nepal, actually. Okay, so what these people do is they get off at this station, they walk to these really, really, really noisy rickshaw ride at the end of it, right? And it's just Yeah, quite crazy. The sound you can hear like miles away. That's how loud they are. In Gujarat, they call them chakados, right? They have a 2-stroke engine and they are super loud. Okay, and so this is actually quite a bad shot. They should have done it better. I wanted to shoot it more square on, but then the train moved and then it sort of obscured the view. So I had to shoot it from an angle. It's a very weird use of diagonals. I really didn't like this frame much, but just to get the message across that some stations do get crowded, right? So the hustle and bustle is there, right? The hustle and bustle is there. But nowadays trains don't run at night. This is Nanpara, by the way, in yes, in Uttar Pradesh, right? And what happens here is that in the daytime, the station is very, very active. The samosa vendors come out, they sell their samosas and their kachoris and stuff. But at night, it becomes something like this, all right? Whereby it's like a ghost town, lah, all right? Most of you can probably see the dog. 2 points if you can catch the monkey, right? There's a monkey here as well. It's seated right here, right above the wash basin, right? So the station becomes a ghost town, and then the train comes the next day morning, and then activities resume as per normal, right? So it's a very shared space, right? We talk about co-working space. This is like a co-relaxing space, right? So in Bombay or any other city, if you walk into a station, major cities, right, chances are you can't walk in unless you're either a bona fide passenger or if you have a platform ticket of some kind. You can't just walk into a passenger because chances are you'll be checked. And if you get caught, it's going to be a hefty fine. And none of the stations in Bombay are particularly, comfortable for you to just walk in and saunter around and take a look, all right, because it's always happening. It's very hectic, right? Whereas stations like Kasia Nest, this is in Gujarat, people just pop by, chill, have a chat. They bring tea for the station master and they just watch the trains go by. So it's a very shared space. It's very well. So this is the station, by the way. This is Kasia Nest station, right? It's so well blended with the surroundings, right? Animals come in, go out. The occasional langur comes in. The peacocks come in. The well, in some cases, dogs as well, right? And dogs in some stations, of course, there are as many dogs as there are passengers, right? That's how empty the station can be. Okay, this is Kamli Ghat in Rajasthan, another one of those mild amount of fog saving me from getting a backlit shot. All right, and the dogs know what to do because the drivers come prepared, okay, with pieces of bread. All right, so the previous night when they have dinner, the drivers will go to the shop and get a few more rotis, these whole wheat breads. All right, they will gather a few of these, and then along the way they actually fling a few outside the window to let the monkeys get them, which I don't think is a very good idea, but they still do it, right? But then at Kamli Ghat, the dogs know the timing. They're there ready, right? Like good little children, they wait for you. And when you throw, it's every dog for himself. Each one is pouncing to get their own share for their first meal. So there's a very symbiotic interaction, right? Between the animals and the humans in these places. There's a lot of time to do these things. The train stops at Kamli Ghat. It's supposed to be like a 5-minute halt, but very often it goes to like 10, 15 minutes. The drivers are chilling out. They'll have a cup of tea, right? And in Sasangir, one of the tap is perpetually leaky so that the parrots and the babblers can feed on them first thing in the morning, right? So there's always a leaky tap where the parrot comes in and it just takes a few sips, and a lot of squirrels also come in and eat a drink of this tap. And yeah, that's the babbler, by the way. This is in a place called Delwada, which is very close to the island of Diu in Gujarat, and they actually drink the dewdrops on the edges of the windows, right? And in Sasangate, there are also a lot of langurs. In Hindi, you call them langur, right? But yeah, the black-faced monkeys, right? And they are becoming a menace, right, in many stations. But it's entirely the humans' fault, all right? It's entirely people's fault because we keep feeding these monkeys, right? We keep feeding them. You can see like this gentleman is throwing some food. These ladies are trying to take a picture. These two are attempting a selfie with the langur in the shot. That's pretty brave as well. Wonder if he got it. But that's what happens. And the monkeys keep getting bolder, right? First, they are on the floor. Then, of course, they start climbing the coach, right? And I thought this was a very nice progression because you have this one adult monkey, one little one here, one adult one little one adult one, and then another adult one here. So this is a nice progression of interspersed with youth and old age, right? one after another. So this is in Majrapura in Uttar Pradesh, and these kids were also feeding it, and the monkeys started getting braver, and they literally snatch stuff from your hands now. Right? This is Goram Ghat in Rajasthan, right? And I've had many unpleasant experiences with them, and one of them, like in a station building, I actually walked into a station building where I had kept my bag in the storeroom, and I walked in to see a bunch of monkeys inside the storeroom. Right? They had already tore open the jute sack of wheat flour, and they were like all covered in white. And then they pounced on me. One of them jumped on my head and ran away. And then it became chaos for me because I'm very sure I won't survive a battle with 4 monkeys. Right? I'm not going to come out of this unscathed. If I might even come out alive, I don't know, right? And then what happened? I came out, and then one of the little monkeys was still stuck inside. I didn't know, and these two adults are like flashing their fangs at me and like taking a swipe at me, and then the passerby tells me, "Oh, you know what? The kid is inside. Just let him go and take his kid." So I took my tripod, I moved aside, and then they got the kid out, right? So it makes why your heartbeat goes to like 600, and you panic, because your equipment is there, and these monkeys are creating a ruckus inside. And but if left to themselves, they are fine. They won't disturb you. But once you start feeding, it's not a privilege anymore. It becomes an entitlement. And what happens is that, they start intruding into the human spaces, right? So with this monkey, it's an unfortunate situation. I only had one frame left in the roll. I managed to get the mother demonstrating the jump, but I couldn't get the student/kid following through and getting the same jump. But the student played cheat. The student jumped from the edge of the headlight. The mother jumped from the edge of the locomotive itself, right? So it's one of those interesting things that you notice when monkeys are left to themselves. They're actually coaching or like picking lies from each other's heads. It's quite interesting how they lead their lives, right? So, like I said, the hustle and bustle is there in a lot of places, right? Even this picture actually has a monkey. It's subtly hidden. If you can find it, that's 5 points to you. Hint, look above the train, you'll find it, right? So unwittingly, I end up taking a lot of these monkeys in my shots without realizing it. It's only when I make the print I realize, oh gosh, there's a monkey there. And then it's right here, the monkey, by the way, right? So this is Nanpara in Uttar Pradesh, right? And some stations, of course, are super eerily dark, right? And this is Dudhwa station. Those wildlife photographers, you might know that Dudhwa is like a tiger hotspot, right? Dudhwa National Park. There's a railway station there, just to let you know, and the train that goes through is a meter gauge train. And this station has such intermittent electricity. It's actually quite difficult because you always have insects that are in summer that keep crawling up your different orifices. It's actually quite a scary place to be in at night. And you have tigers, leopards, elephants, and deer for company. So it's not always safe to be hanging around outside all by yourself. All right. But fortunately, the station crew is there. So they kind of take care of you. All right. And some stations, now just to put things in perspective, right? This little building that you see here, okay? This building was built in 2005 or 2006, right? And it has already started crumbling. Okay, it's one story. It has one window, one door. No, two windows and one door. That's it. All right. The floor has started giving way. It's starts becoming uneven. The plaster on the walls have started crumbling, right? And like this was just built 15 years ago. And these stations were built like 60, like maybe 80, 90 years ago, and they are still rock solid, right? And this station, Guy got hauled 15 years ago, it's already crumbling, right? This is like a station that was introduced quite late in between two stations, right? And most of the meter gauge trains in India, they run on what's called a single line network, meaning between two railway stations, there's only one set of tracks that ply. All right, one set of tracks that ply between two stations. Okay, so think of it this way: for those of you in Singapore, your metro line has two sets of tracks. The trains can crisscross halfway. Right? Bombay local trains have like six sets of tracks, so trains can crisscross halfway, no problems. All right, but the older lines in Uttar Pradesh, they only have one line between the tracks, so the trains can only run. Only one train can run in between two stations at any point of time. All right. So what will happen is that two trains will meet at a station and then they'll go their own ways. You cannot cross halfway. All right. So Guy Got Halt is one of those stations where you cannot cross. It only has one pair of tracks along it. Okay. So it's what's called a halt station. So obviously they didn't bother making the building too big, but they surely could have made it sturdy enough for it to withstand the test of time. right? It hasn't even lasted 15 years. It's a bit of a joke, but it's a great place to shoot in winter with the fog and everything, right? And which brings us to the next part. Now, this was told to me by a pointsman, Mr. Ashok Bival, right? And he works at a station called Kalakund. And he was the one who told me, like, you know what, this line makes a loss. It doesn't make money, okay? Because it's been cut from, like, it used to go from Kacheguda in Andhra Pradesh all the way to Ajmer in Rajasthan, right? And now it's just running like 60 kilometers from the original like 500-600 kilometer route that it had. So obviously it's making a loss. But then he said that, look, the lines still run because these people need it, right? And the people he was referring to was these people in Kalakund. They, just to let you know, Kalakund station is not accessible by road. It's been around for over 100 years, all right? It's not. It's been around for over 100 years. There's still not a paved road that can bring you to this railway station. Okay, so just to give you an idea, so these people carry these leaf bundles to a place called Mahu, where they sell it off, right? And they that's their source of income. So they take these trains like 10 rupees to get to Mahu from here, right? But if you take any other form of transport, you either have to walk a lot to a road and then take a bus. It's going to be very expensive. It's not easy to walk with these stacks of leaves as well. So this train actually does a very important service for these people, right? And to the point where they literally use the leaf bales as a seat. Okay, so they sell this for the people in Mahu who have goats and cows that need to eat, because their grazing grounds are quite far. All right, so they sell these leaves, and it goes a step further, mind you. The Indian Railways, just to give you some perspective, the Indian Railways is the cheapest form of transport in the whole of India, if not the world. All right, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the cheapest form of transport in the world. Let me just give you some numbers to put it into perspective. If you want to travel 100 kilometers on the Indian Railway on a passenger train, right, just a simple second class sitting compartment, 100 kilometers will cost you 30 rupees approximately. All right, 30 rupees. 30 rupees is 60 cents in Singapore. It's about 50 US cents, right? 50 US cents to travel 100 kilometers. Okay, put things in perspective. In Singapore, to travel 30 kilometers by the metro between two stations, Pasir Ris and Jukun, it costs you $2. All right, $2 is 100 rupees. All right, so in Singapore for 30 kilometers is 100 rupees. In India, it's 100 kilometers for 30 rupees. Okay, it's one of the cheapest form of transport. So every time a politician makes an excuse like, oh, you know what, due to the competition from the buses, we are not able to run these trains, that is nonsense. That is utter nonsense. Okay, given a choice, most people will take the train, considering it's like magnitudes cheaper than taking an equivalent bus. Okay, all right. So and these are the people that benefit the most: the gypsies, the nomadic people, who are literally transporting their whole lives with them, right? Big sacks of food, their utensils, their cooking utensils, their kids, everybody just boards the train, right? Because it's literally the cheapest way to go, right? And for places like Kalakun, like what I said earlier, there's literally really no road access, right? Unless you know someone with a motorbike and you want to do some dirt biking to get to the nearest town, there's really no way you can do this, right? And so when the trains run here, they're actually serving a big part of the community that would not have other options. Okay, so when the trains close for gauge conversion, it's actually a big loss, because one, there'll be no trains for like 2 years at least. All right, and secondly, the bigger trains that ply these lines can't go any faster than these trains because of a lot of speed restrictions. There are slopes, there are national parks, so it's really not benefiting them. They can make do with these trains, just maintain the tracks and the rolling stock. It's as simple as that. All right, and this is something that somebody mentioned earlier as well. I think it was Yogesh, and he said that, yeah, it's this big organization where people from all walks of life, all right, you don't get to choose your passenger, your fellow passenger, all right? Even on the most expensive class of travel, the first class air-conditioned compartment, you don't get to choose who you travel with, okay? So Sikh, Zoroastrian, Christian, Muslim, Baha'i, I don't know, right? Jain, all right? Anybody can, so nobody has united the country like the railways. No politician has united the country like the railways, all right? And it's one of those things that the railway should pride itself upon its altruistic principles. I mean, I'm gonna be corrected on this. They keep saying that, oh, the railways is becoming more profit-minded. Yes, there are some steps in that direction, okay, but there is still a lot of altruism left in the railways. All right, there's still a fair bit of altruism left in the railways, right? So this is one of those things I saw. Like, I saw people like from all walks of life, they're boarding the same train, they're traveling. It unites the country like no other politician ever could. Okay, and look at that goat there. That goat managed to board a train a few 100 kilometers away, right? Now it's not the same goat, like it's a different goat. Okay, it's a different goat, right? This is in Uttar Pradesh, and it's one of those pictures that I took for all the wrong reasons. I'll tell you why. The reason I took this photo was because this gentleman's sweater was the same color as the compartment, the coach, the maroon color, right? The clothes were the same. So I was like, wow, this is going to make an interesting shot. But then it's very stupid because I was shooting on black and white film. Like, what difference does it make? It's all going to come out gray anyway. And then I didn't think about it. I was going to shoot. And then he quickly asked me to stop. He said, wait. And then he went in and he brought this goat out. And actually he helped me, because had it just been him, like, it would not have worked, right? It's just a gray shirt and a gray coat. But then when he brought the goat, it added that X factor to the photo all of a sudden. And I was like, oh, wow, this is quite interesting. I mean, the goat is very reluctant. Like, it's like, oh, can we get this over and done with, right? But this shot was quite interesting because the milk from the goat is at the back here. And then he rushed in to bring out the goat. And I don't even know if it's his goat, actually. He probably just picked some other guy's goat and brought it out. And I got a shot. And yeah, I have to sprint out with me. And I just hope that every time I go back, I get to see this person so I can pass him the photo, because I don't have his contact information or anything. It's a bit sad, because every time I take pictures of people, I get down their WhatsApp number or something that allows me to do that, right? And then there's this group of people that were just shortchanged by life for whatever reason, for no fault of their own, right? And normally you would have seen, like, most of my shots, I'm shooting it quite tight, right? I generally go close and shoot. But this one, I actually took a step back to shoot it a bit looser, because I spotted two things that were quite interesting, right? One was the Indian flag, which was on the left of the door. And then on the right, you see Gandhi's spectacles, right? Mohandas Gandhi's spectacles. And this gentleman was smack in between, right? They are the mendicants. People call them sadhus, godmen. Yeah, you know, the group of people that in some ways fell through the cracks. You know, they couldn't quite belong anywhere. And that's why I thought it was quite apt that the Indian flag is on the left. And like, you know, the Mohandas Gandhi had lofty ambitions for how the country should go. The country went in some ways, right? And then this gentleman, like, through no fault of his own, ended up in this situation, right? And I'll tell you why no fault of his own. A lot of these sadhus, right? A lot of these mendicants, they've been abandoned as kids for many reasons, right? One of them is like, oh, the astrologer said that the kid is going to bring you bad luck, abandon the kid, right? So they send them to these, I don't know, they're not even orphans, they're like ashrams, right? And then these kids become, and they have to travel like in a very miserable condition. They get kicked around, they get shooed away. And the railways is altruistic in that sense that generally when the ticket checker does check tickets, he lets them go, right? He gives them a free pass, like, yeah, you know what, just go, right? Because they can barely afford a meal for themselves, let alone buy a ticket for their trip. So the ticket checker just closes an eye. But a lot of them actually are very, very unfortunate. And I've taken quite a few of their pictures along the way for various reasons. And they are very often seen sitting at the door. And by the way, just to let you know, this sign here, all right, just says that please do not travel on the roof of the train and on the footboard. This where he's sitting, that's the footboard, right? So that's exactly where he's traveling. Okay, so yeah, chances are he couldn't get a seat, or that he was shooed away, and the poor fellow has to carry on his journey in this miserable state. So I kind of felt bad for them. And sometimes they don't even get a seat. They actually travel in the luggage compartment. Okay, and they're not even offered a seat in the coach. And I think that's quite bad, because some of them are actually quite old. They are into their 60s and 70s, and they are just you know, quite handicapped in some ways, and here they are, having to rush to the station tap, get some water, and then just drink it off as they drive, right? But of course, I'm not saying that all of them are angels. Some of them abuse their privilege. Okay, like Indian Railways doesn't allow smoking for one. All right, and this gentleman obviously lit up his joint and decided to have a puff, and he told me that this is not something that is just done for fun. He says that this is divinely ordained. It was given to me by my guru, and then it is actually as a form of prayer. I'm smoking this. I was like, yeah, bro, whatever rocks your boat, that's fine. And the kid next to me got very, very interested. This kid was helping me. This person speaks like a very strange Marwadi dialect. It's not like proper Hindi, so I can't quite understand what he's saying. So this kid was helping me translate. And then the kid said, I want to take a puff too. I want to know what it's like. And this gentleman just said that, look, you have to get off at the next stop. And if you take one puff of this, you're going to travel 100 kilometers further and you still won't wake up. All right. You'll end up at the last stop and you still won't wake up. You'll fall asleep. So just be a good boy and just sit down there. And I just burst out laughing when he said that. I actually understood what he said for once. And then I said, yeah, you know what, bro, just chill. Okay. When you get to that age, maybe you can give it a shot. Don't do this now. So I call this shot The Man in Seat 36. And he also has a set of very sad story. I also asked him how he became this. And he said, yeah, I don't know who my parents are. From all my memories from my guru who taught him whatever he taught him, right? And like I said, some of them do abuse. Like, this is a ladies only compartment, right? You can see the sign on the top left of the door. It says only for ladies. And then this gentleman was giving a blessing on his way out. The train was already moving when I took this picture, and he just gave me a blessing. Yeah, so like some of them do abuse their privilege a little bit, right? But for many, the railway line is very, very important. I mean, it's very cliche when you keep saying that the railway is the lifeline of the country, but yeah, for many people, it's actually very important. Like this gentleman was bringing his boy. His boy is sick, by the way, was sick. Hope he's better now. From a place called Quaint in Rajasthan to a place called Devgarh, right? The hospital is in Devgarh, so he was bringing his kid by the train. It's almost like a 2 to 3 hour journey, 2 hour journey at least, right? So it's actually quite a long journey. And this train, he only has 2 trains, right? The morning train that brings him there and the afternoon train that brings him back. That's it. Okay. So I really hope he managed to finish his appointment, because that ticket would have cost him like 15 rupees only. But if he has to take a bus, it's going to cost him like 70 or 80 rupees easily, right? That's over $1, by the way, right? And so like I was saying earlier, the light in Uttar Pradesh is just so easy to take pictures with, because it's so soft because of the fog. And this uncle and niece were coming from a place called Rupedia, which is the Nepalganj road station. They were going to a place called Risia. And they were talking to me, and they said, oh, the niece spent the weekends with them. And then on Sunday evening, Sunday morning, he brings the niece back to the mother's place, right? So I took quite a few pictures of them, like from inside as well as hanging out of a window, right? I mean, this is too cliche, right? There's too many pictures of bikes on so I'll just skip this one, right? I think there are enough photos of bicycles hanging off. But something interesting is that every time these guys hang the bicycles on the windows, they have a bit of a problem in winter. You see, this gentleman is in a bit of a dilemma, right? He's covered his face partially. He still wants to be seen, but he still needs to protect himself from the cold wind, all right? And the reason, because the bicycle is entirely supported on this pedal that you see here, all right? This little pedal that you see here. So what happens is that it blocks the window, the back window, right? This window is made of glass, by the way. So when you close this window, you can still see outside. If you close this window, it gets completely dark, because it's a opaque window, right? So he can't close this window because the pedal is sticking in. So he left the window open, and he's like kind of like dangling between two worlds, right? One, wanting to be seen by the camera, two, making sure he doesn't get too cold in the face, right? So that's what the view looks like from the inside. Okay, so I thought it was a very interesting moment. And I got the shot, right? Milk no longer runs on these lines anymore. All right, if you want to catch milk trains, head to the line between Delhi and Rewari. They still have milk trains, like trains full of milk, right? So these trains don't run. This is on the Pilibhit Mailani line near Pilibhit Tiger Reserve, right? There's a station called Mala. And that's where I saw this train. And then the staff told me that the trains are becoming too unreliable, so the milkmen stopped using them. All right, they are always late. And there's some sort of a scheme going on between the local politicians and stuff, but I don't want to get into this now, right? And so yeah, the hay bales, the grass bales, actually quite interesting. There was another attempt at a panning shot, like moving the camera with the train, right? And try to do that. Normally you do it with cars, it's much easier. With trains, it's a lot more difficult, right? Just a little bit of extra information. The first two digits that you see on the coach here, that indicates the year of manufacture, right? So this coach is 20 years old already, all right? The first two digits, 01. So if you see like 92 or 94, it means the coach was made in 92 or 1994. All right, that's actually quite old. Okay, so all these, when you hang around with the railways long enough, you get all this information that you have no idea what to do. So you start a YouTube talk and then you start telling people this kind of random nonsense, right? So that's basically what I'm doing now, right? And at least, I mean, I keep talking about sad things. Now let's talk about something happy. One of those things that brings a smile to my face as a photographer is when we pass people photos, right? And then the person says how much I should pay you. Whether he intends to pay or not is another question. The very fact that he actually mentions that question, I just feel a bit warmed in my heart. Like, wow, something I gave you is worth paying for. This is so nice, right? Because we are so used to getting people leech our images off for free. Can I use it for publicity? I'll just give you credit and all this kind of nonsense. And then here in villages, I always get asked this question: Can I? How much do I pay you for the pictures, right? And one of the people that asked me this question was Mr. Vikram Moya. Vikram Moya works at Jetalsar station. I hope he's still working. And he operated one of the last few elevated lever cabins, right? This is a lever cabin. Like all those things are levers, right? You pull them to lower the signal and things like that, right? So he operated one of the last few lever cabins in the meter gauge network, right? In fact, it's the last elevated one besides the one in Kunnur, which is in Tamil Nadu, right? So he operated the last elevated lever cabin. And I think we've seen this, right, before in movies, right? So the damsel gets tied to the railway track. Then the villain goes to the lever and he just pulls the track and the train goes and the hero comes and saves the damsel at the last minute, right? That's generally the sequence of events that go, right? And it's not that simple, mind you. Okay, don't believe the movies. It doesn't work that way at all. Okay, you can't just pull a lever and change the track. It's not possible. All right, you need to have four people in cahoots with you. You need to have this gentleman, the pointsman here, the station master, the engine driver, as well as the station master in the previous station. All right, everybody needs to be in on the plan for you to be able to sabotage the train. And that's exactly what Vikram Moya told me. He said, you can try pulling it as much as you want. The signal won't come down unless the station master unlocks something from his station, right? So the whole thing, this job he does involves basically welcoming the train. I call it welcoming the train into the platform, right? So this is a Jetalsar. It's like the strangest coincidence, right? The clock there only shows the right time twice a day. I guess you know what that means, right? It only shows the correct time twice a day, right? So it's basically a clock that doesn't work, lah. Okay, so it stays put at 9:20 all the time. Okay, and coincidentally, this train was supposed to arrive at 9:20, right? And it happened that the clock was stopped at 9:20 and the train arrived at about 9:20. And then I got a picture. And it's one of those things that I look at it, I'm like, yeah, you know what? You had the removal of obstacles on your left. Just for those who don't know, like Hindu, the pantheon of Hindu gods, right? The elephant god is like the remover of obstacles, right? Ganesha is like the remover of obstacles. Like if you start something, you generally try to be very nice to him so that the obstacles are taken off, right? But this line couldn't be saved even by him. Okay, so the line was closed about a month after I took this photo. And with that, the last elevated cabin of the meter gauge network in the north vanished as well. Okay, much to my I felt really sad about it. Okay, and the other person, so this gentleman, I passed him the photo, and he insisted that he pays. And I said, no, I'm not going to take any payment from you. Forget about it. He said, why don't you just stay? Let me at least buy you a cup of tea. I said, okay, fine. But then I told him, look, I'm in this train now, and I'm going to go to Veraval. I can't hang around. He said, no, bring your bag out. I'll buy you a ticket for the next train. It's only 2 hours from now. We can have a train. We can have a meal. I can buy you tea, and then I'll get you a ticket. I'll make sure you get a ticket for the next train. At that point, like I was like, you know what, just do it, lah. So I told him, no, you don't have to buy me a ticket. I'll stay. Okay, I'll stay with him. And he actually brought me a cup of tea. He gave me 2 cups of tea, one inside the station and one at the tea vendor outside. And I bought my ticket and I boarded the next train, right? And went over to Veeraval that day. So absolute angel of a person. The other person who had the strange request for me was this. He's the station master for Sasangir, right? His name is J.R. Meena. He comes all the way from Rajasthan, all right? And he told me, this was the day I was leaving, right? So I was just waiting for the train. I had about half an hour to spare. And he said, look, bro, I've worked here for 30 years. I don't have a single picture of me in this station. I don't even have a cell phone photo of myself in this station. And I turned and I looked at him and I said, look, at least for that, I must take your photo. All right. And I took a picture of him and it was nothing like this. I actually shot a lot tighter. All right. I actually cut the headspace a lot more. And after I finished taking the pictures, he said, did you get the peacock feathers in the shot? Then I said, no, I thought the picture was about you. But then I realized that, well, he has a point. You know what? If you want to get the station, you want to make it a so-called environmental portrait, might as well get the environment fully. So upon his suggestion, I actually stepped back and took this picture. So this is the creative input came from the model himself, right? And I actually went back to the station the next year and I passed him the photos and he said, yeah, same thing. Like, can I buy you, how much do I pay you for these prints? So there's this mentality in photography, as far as photography is concerned, that, photographers exist in 2 tiers, I think. There are those that just shoot with a cell phone. I'm assuming this, right? So when you go to Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh as well, like there are photographers who are shooting on their cell phone every day. But for these people, when you deliver a print, you somehow like get elevated, like you get promoted to a certain level whereby you become like this wedding photographer who actually charges money to take pictures and produce prints, right? So you get sort of promoted to this level, and that's the kind of treatment I was getting everywhere I was going. They were like, how much should I pay you for this? And I was like, no, you don't have to pay me anything. I'm just thankful that you let me take your picture. And it's very very heartening to know that somebody is willing to pay you for a photo that you handed over to this person. And so these photographers are seeing the people see you as a different person. All of a sudden it becomes a profession. It becomes like, so the value of the print is like, it just promotes you to like some other level. I mean, I'm nowhere near that level, but yeah, they've promoted me there. And I'm like, yeah, I tell this to people as well. Your hard drives are fantastic, but trust me, the very reason pictures of you as a kid survived is because your dad bothered printing them out. The colors might have faded, but the photo is still there. The value of the print is still there, right? So make printouts of your pictures, at least a few, and keep them in some cupboard just locked up. They might get a bit of fungus and they might turn yellow, but there's no guarantee your computer can read your hard drive 10 years down the road, right? Because the very mount, that USB mount itself is changing. The technology of how data is stored is changing. It's not going to be easy, right? So please print at least a few photos. You'll appreciate it a lot more like 10 years down the road. Okay, so that's Mr. J.R. Meena in his station with the Niels Bohr token machines, right? So the machine he's using now talks to the next station, Kasia Ness. If he wants to talk to the previous station, he goes to the one on the left, which is the one that communicates with Talala. It's straight out of a 1920s Frankenstein movie. You have these knobs and these buttons and these dials and these Frankensteinian machines that he has. It's very interesting how this whole thing works, right? So I met railway staffs in many lines of job scopes, right? And one of them is a pointsman. And when you enter a station, this is what the engine driver sees, right? Or when you exit a station as well, right? You will see one gentleman standing there with the lever, all right? Having gotten the clearance from the station master, he will make sure the train arrives and departs at the right track, okay? So this is at Patalpani. This gentleman is in control of which path the train takes. The train is supposed to take the path on the right. All right. The path on the left goes to nowhere. It's meant to catch a runaway train. Like if a train goes out of control, it will go there and into the bushes, right? So he actually controls, he's what's called a pointsman, right? And one such pointsman, the man who said that railways doesn't do anything for profit, was this gentleman, right? This angel of a person. His name is Ashok Bival. The first few color pictures I took of him, he had a nice flock of hair. And when I went back to pass in the photos, he told me that his mother had passed away. That's why he shaved his head bald, right? And then I took more pictures of him. and then passed it to him the following year when I went back to see him again, right? So he's here, he's setting up the point, and I think most of us have seen this in some National Geographic documentary about steam engines, right? So Mr. Bivel does it like a pro, right? So there are two images here: collect, right? Prepare and collect, right? And so I'm just going to do it like a GIF image just for a few moments because it feels really good. But okay, but yeah, that's basically what he does. All right, so he hands over the token. Now, what's this token? What he's basically handing over is this little ball, right? This little ball that gives the engine driver the authority to proceed to the next station, right? So once the engine driver receives this ball, he's the king of that route. Nobody can stop him. All right. So between two stations, there's only one ball. And if this engine driver has it, he will go with it. Okay. So he will go to the next station. So you can never have two trains on the same track. All right. 4 people have to be sleeping for that to happen: the pointsman, the station master, the engine driver, as well as the station master on the other side. All right. So it's almost impossible to have two trains on the same track. Okay. And that gentleman has seen more tigers than I think all of us here combined, all right, in his lifespan. He works at Dudhwa railway station, Mr. Ram Baksh. Very tough time understanding his Hindi. He speaks in an Avdi dialect, right? So, but an absolute angel of a person, took very good care of me. Just to let you all know, I lost all my gear in 2017 June, all right? My entire camera bag and all the films that I had shot all got stolen, all right? I lost 20 rolls of film, along with all my hopes and desires, right? Okay, and then what happened was when a few months later, when I saw him, that's the first thing he told me. He said that, what does a warrior do when he loses his weapon? He fights with his hands. And you're back here, so I'm assuming you're going to carry on with this fight. And I was very touched by what he said. I actually wanted to just give him a hug and say that, you know what, that was really nice of you to say that. And what he did after that, he lit up a fire next to the station. It was really cold, like 3-4 degrees Celsius, right? Dudhwa used to get snow once upon a time. Thanks to global warming, it doesn't snow anymore, but it still goes down to 3-4 degrees. He lit up a huge fire and he just sat down and he told me like stories of the Ramayana in Avdi Hindi. And yeah, it's yeah, you know, the whole, yeah, it was just a very pleasant experience just to be with him after a big problem that I had gone through, right? And these people are called the gods of the tracks. They are the ones who maintain the tracks, right? They are the ones who maintain the tracks. They are the ones who actually look after the tracks. They are called the gods of. I call them the gods of the tracks because the train literally runs on their. I mean, literally, metaphorically, it actually runs on their chest. They say, right, because they are the ones working on the tracks. And this gentleman has a lot of lion and tiger and leopard stories as well. He walks 14 kilometers every day, 7 kilometers into Katarnia Ghat Wildlife Sanctuary and 7 kilometers back. All right, they call him Mr. Sheru because he has a lot of tiger stories, right? So. That's also the gangman at Palia Kala, right? And I shot as a result of which, as a result of which, I ended up shooting a lot of veterans as well. Okay, I ended up shooting a lot of retired railway personnel. This gentleman is 85 years old. His name is Badaruddin. If you ask him, he will say, "My name is Badaruddin, son of Nasiruddin." Nothing to do with Nasiruddin Shah. He's older than Nasiruddin Shah, by the way. Okay, so he used to drive those 2 steam locos at the back. Engines of that kind. All right. So I actually brought him to Rewari from Mahu, from Indore area. I brought him all the way to Rewari just to take a picture of him in front of that locomotive. And he gave his thoughts on how he used to run the locomotive and all that. It was a very, very pleasant experience. And that's one of those moments that I felt really happy. I actually managed to do a documentary with him, with a friend of mine named Mahen Bala. And we actually did a video documentary of him. Right. So hopefully it comes in sometime in the future. Right. And there have been people I've shot who didn't want to be photographed, like this railway, this engine driver who said, "You can take any pictures you like, just don't take a picture of my face, I'll get into trouble." I mean, you can't just walk into an engine like that, right? Just to let you know, you need a railway permit and stuff like that. So I had a permit. I just told him, "Look, I'm here legally, I'm not here illegally." And he said, "No, I don't want to be seen." I said, "Sure, no problems." I just shot from the back. And when you look at the engine as well, it's like a relic of the past. There's no digital controls at all. All right, everything is analog, dials, knobs, levers, right? This here is the brake, right? And like caution orders, they are just put on a piece of paper and hung up here. like where they're supposed to go slower, where they can resume at normal speed and stuff like that. So it's extremely manual and mechanical. Okay. And like not just railway staff, I've taken pictures of wayside people along the tracks as well. And this kid here, his name is Jitender, right? And I took a picture of him. And when I came back to pass him the photo, he also said the same thing, like, how much do I pay for the photo? I said, nah, I don't want anything. And he actually didn't take payment for his tea until I forced the money and asked him to take the money for the tea as well. So that's the cup of tea, right? And so, yeah, this is a stall near a barrage. It's called the over the Gagra River, right? And this person runs a tea stall there. So I took his picture. And it was supposed to be just 3 people. It was working just fine until this gentleman jumped in at the very last minute and did a photo bomb, right? So you can see his leg got chopped off. Otherwise, it was just supposed to be 3 people. It was perfectly set up. But I mean, I couldn't say no, lah. So I just took a picture. And yeah, I'm a bit unhappy that his leg got cut off. His leg had been fully inside. I think it would have been a better shot, right? Okay. And something I was told to me, see how language changes, right? This kid told me this in Hindi, right? The kid at the center that's running towards me, that's the one that told me that. Okay, he said, don't take my selfie, don't take my selfie, and he started running towards me. And then I was a bit confused because, well, if I'm taking a selfie, I'm taking a picture of myself, why is it bothering you, right? And then I realized that no, actually he's using the word selfie to refer to photographs. So very soon, I don't know, like people might not say photos anymore. They might just refer to everything as selfies. I really hope that doesn't become the case because they're 2 separate types of photos, right? You point a camera at yourself. So this kid ran towards me and he said, don't take a selfie, don't. So I stopped for a moment, but the gentleman behind me, the guy who was walking, he said, nah, he's just kidding. Just go and take the photos. They don't want to do anything. So then they came closer and then they started getting into poses, right? Like folded arms. And then I had one of those issues. This kid holding the fish just couldn't look at the camera. All right. The reason this shot happened, you see the train behind him. I was actually in that train. My train was leaving in 20 minutes time because the other train was supposed to come in before my train leaves. So I thought, should I? And then I said, never mind, I'll just carry all my gear. So I carried both my backpacks, my clothes backpack as well as my camera backpack, and I came here. And this kid, I shot like 6 pictures of him. He would never look at the camera. He kept looking at the corners. His eyes were just darting all over the place. And I'm like, you know what? I just got to live with what I have. So I just took the shot and I just lived with it. Okay. And they actually jumped in the pools to catch fish. And I was quite surprised because the pool, I didn't know it was wet throughout the year, but apparently it is. And they're able to catch fishes, right? And other kids that I shot, same thing, right? When they see the camera, kids love trains, kids love cameras as well. I think 2 things we can safely say, right? Most kids love trains, most kids love camera. So these 3 kids were inside. You can see their mother here inside the window, right? So these 3 kids were inside as well. When they saw the camera, they came out. And these were 2 trains crossing. So both the trains were at the station and we were going to leave. But this kid, the one on the right, actually came up to me. He got off his train, got into my train and said he wanted to see the picture. And then I got into this thing, like I said, oh no, you know what? This camera is a film camera. You can't see the photos. And he was like, are you trying to mess around with me? He wasn't convinced. So I asked him to go back. I took a picture on a cell phone and I showed him the photo. And well, he was quite okay with it. But I still think he thinks I was trying to cheat him because I really couldn't show him the photo. Okay. So otherwise, kids love trains, right? They really, really love trains. And they are even more than happy to share their joy with their siblings, right? When they bring the kids out and show me that. So one of those difficult tasks I had was shooting kids while hanging out of a train, right? This is what will happen, okay? That's my fingers there, by the way, okay? So this is what will happen because meter gauge trains rattle a lot because the tracks are not maintained that well anymore. This train is traveling at 50 kilometers per hour, but the train shakes like that. So you're trying to hang out of the window, manually focus with your camera, take a picture, advance the film, manually focus again, take a picture, advance the film, and all this while this is happening at 50 kilometers per hour. And then you're like, oh gosh, you know what? Forget it, you know? But this kid was quite patient. He just stood there, and it's this tightrope walking because you want to make sure the train looks like it's moving. So you need to make sure you get enough of the foreground here that gets this motion blur, right? And while at the same time, you need to make sure that the train is not getting blurred, only the floor is getting blurred. So you got to hold your camera steady as well. Okay, it's a bit of a logistical nightmare with a little manual focus camera. And then this train moving, but to my credit, okay, 12 pictures later, I got it. Okay, and it's yeah, I mean, it's a secret, 12 pictures, but you know what? I'll just let you guys know. It was not a one shot, one kill. Okay, and yeah, so kids love train, whether they're inside or outside. You can rest assured they just enjoy looking at trains, right? And that brings us to the next part, nightlife, right? And not the kind that you go to a disco, right? This is yeah. This was something a station master at Kansianes in Gujarat told me. All right, and he said, look, when you use the toilet, it's fine, not a problem. Just open the door, look up at the roof, you will see a snake in summer. But it was like November, December already, so he said it should be okay, right? I mean, imagine like you go into a toilet and then this thing rears its head in front of your face. You're gonna be a bit panicked, right? It's like, gosh, what's gonna happen, right? So he warned me. Fortunately, there was no snake. Really, right? Okay, really, fortunately, there was no snake. So nighttime, like a whole new set of challenges come about, right? A whole new set of challenges come about whereby um, you are trying to focus at night, you're trying to take pictures whereby the camera is staying open for a prolonged period of time, like almost an hour, to allow stars to become trails and stuff like that. All right. So for the people who are familiar with photography, this is called a long exposure, right? Okay, so what you do is basically leave the camera open for 1 hour and then you come back, pick up the camera, and you go back, right? So this is at a place called Choridia. This place has no more, right? This place is no more, right? So they've converted it to broad gauge. They're converting it now, and these signals are gone. All the mechanical signals are gone, right? And the beauty of the meter gauge networks is that everything is mechanical. Everything is mechanical. Minimum electricity. Only the phone lines need a bit of electricity, and that too is done by just winding the telephone. You can create the electricity and you can talk to the next person already on the next station. Okay, so when trains cross at night, you need to make sure the signals are working. These signals are actually kerosene lamps that are put inside the mechanical arm. All right, so these arms, they are called semaphore signals. Because they are these arms, they're called semaphore signals. All right, if you want to be really nitty gritty about it, they are called lower quadrant semaphore signals. All right, one of those things that are of no use to anyone, but I still happen to know because somebody tells me about it, right? So these gentlemen actually work at night, and they actually light up these little kerosene lamps. Like you can see, there's one above the signal here, and there's one here. He lights one up and he puts it inside, and they claim that this works better than LED lights when engine drivers are looking at it from a kilometer away. They say that these lamps actually stand out more prominently than the LED light. I don't know how true it is, but that's what they say, right? And those are the lamps, okay? And I said there'll be a little bit of gear talk, right? Just a little bit, right? This is one of those things, okay? This is the last part where we talk about gear, okay? After this, no more gear, it'll just be stories, right? And every time somebody says that film is better than digital and all this nonsense, crap talk, just shut them up with 2 words. All right, just tell, oh, you're shooting on film. How does it work when you shoot in low light handheld? All right, and if the person stares at you blankly, you know you won your argument. Okay, and just carry on with your life. All right, so that's one of the reasons why I put a digital image here, right? So one of those things that happens that just had me in awe at the technology that has come so far. Now, this entire scene, the whole station has been lighted up with one matchstick. All right. The gentleman lighted up a cigarette. So when he struck the match, that's what's lighting up the whole station. Okay. On film, you needed 1 hour to get the same shot. Okay. And that too with a hurricane lamp. That hurricane lamp is right here. Okay, it's a hurricane lamp. Dudhwa has no electricity sometimes at night. Like for 6-7 hours, there'll be no electricity, right? So they light up a hurricane lamp at the station, and it took 1 hour to get the same shot, what could be done like 20-30 seconds on a digital camera, right? So anytime someone says, yeah, you need, film is better than digital, just show them, tell them low light, handheld. How does it work for you, right? So, and of course, shoddy negative maintenance on my part. That's why you have these artifacts and everything appearing. Gosh, really horrible. I know. Sorry about that. Right. So it's if you were a tiger or a leopard, this is what you'd see. Right. You'll see one crazy gentleman standing by the track holding a flaming torch, and a serpentine snake with 3 lights heading towards you. Okay. So at night, the pointsmen actually carry flaming torches for 3 reasons. One is to keep animals away from the tracks. All right. 2, to let the engine driver see where the tracks part and which track he's going on to. All right. And 3, to keep the animals away from the engine as well, so that the train as well, so the animals don't end up attacking the train unwittingly. All right. So that's why the flaming torch is held while the train passes through the station or passes into the station, right? Stops at the station, right? And that's one of those shots that actually took me 3 years to take. All right. The first year I shot in digital. The last year I shot in digital because I couldn't trust my cameras anymore after a while. I'll tell you more about this later, right? And you realize the digital camera captured the wheel as well. The film camera, the wheels are gone. All right. So even at train just looks like a wall. Okay, but I just learned to live with it. This is the best we can do. We just live with this. All right. And but you do create some interesting effects at night, especially in the sweltering summer in Dudhwa, where it's so hot. Everybody just comes off to take their shirts off. All right, just to take a chill pill. Okay, it's really, really warm. So everybody hanging outside is with like singlets. All right, while people inside also, they are like, moving around, leaving the windows open, coming close to the windows. Okay, so it becomes like a pretty interesting shot with these wispy effects of people walking about. So that's something I thought was quite interesting. Anyone who tells you that the whole of India is electrified either doesn't know India well enough or is just lying. All right. I can name 4 places at the top of my head that have no electricity. Okay. No running electricity. Majra Purab is one of them. Okay. So Majra Purab, they have some solar panels that allow them to charge some batteries, but when the fog is too thick in the morning, the batteries don't get charged adequately. So very often at night, the station master finishes up his paperwork under a hurricane lamp. Okay, so there are many places in India where there are no electricity. Majrapur is one of them. They have no running electricity. They only have a DG set that can be turned on 10 minutes before the train arrives and has to be switched off after the train leaves, because they only have enough kerosene or diesel for 1 month. All right, before the railways come and tops it up for the next month. Okay, to prevent abuse and illicit trading in diesel. All right, so so that's what the workbench looks like. Okay, 3 telephones, one to talk to the previous station, one to talk to the next station, and one to talk with the headquarters in Lucknow. Right. So yeah, sleeper trains are no more on the meter gauge train. So you sleep on hard sleepers. Okay. Just an interesting anecdote as well. At a railway crossing, all right, there was one gentleman who tried to get a bit too ambitious. Okay, he tried to get his bike under the level crossing after it had come down. All right, the level crossing was down already, but he insisted on clearing it. He cleared the first one, but couldn't clear the second one. Again, the train was coming already, but he's quite safe. All right, there's a very big gap between him and the train. But so the pointsman just stared at him, and then he said, have you done all your efforts, or is there more? Come on, show me what you have, right? And then he told me, sir, you should take his photo and put it up at the newspaper tomorrow. And I said, well, I'm not a press photographer, but I still laughed at what he said. It was quite humorous, right? And the train came by, and this gentleman was stuck there. He took just as long as he would have had he just waited on the other side. Okay, so rail crossings are a bit of a hit and miss. Okay, a lot of times people try to surpass it. If they can just wait for 5 minutes, the train goes past and it's safe for everybody, but people just don't listen. All right, they want to beat the gantry, right? But kids always stay at railway crossings because they want to watch the train. Okay, and that makes it very exciting for them. All right, so when these 2 kids came, I was running to the crossing, and this old woman came running towards me, wagging her finger like that. And I was like, hey, babe, what's wrong with you, right? And she told me something like, you can't board the train. And I told her, look, I don't want to board the train. And then another lady walked by, and then she just told, hey, this boy comes here every year to take photos of the train. Just let him go, right? And then I was very happy to be called a boy at 37 years of age, right? So that just made my moment. But then, responsibilities took over. So I ran, and then these 2 kids were going to the farm to cut their sugarcane with the sickle in the hand, right? So and then I took the picture while they were checking out the trains. And I'm really lucky to have gotten this shot, because this train was actually accelerating quite a lot. Okay. And the other animals that actually behave at railway crossings are sheep. This is at Marwar Ranavas. This is one of the pictures you saw earlier, right? So this gentleman, you see the stick raised up, okay? He was actually at the crossing a little bit earlier, and I told him, hey, I need to take a picture of you with your sheep when the train goes by. And he said, oh, no, I can't do that. I need to go home. I held my hands together and I said, please, if the train doesn't come in 2 minutes, you can slap me across my face, right? And he looked at his friend a bit awkwardly, and then he said, okay, fine, I'll stay. And then the train siren sounded, right? And so that's when he raised up his stick and he said, if the train siren sounds, these guys are going to scatter all over the place. So he raised up his stick and the train stopped honking. Okay. When you go by railway crossings in India, you will see the sign W/L, which means whistle level crossing. The train driver has to whistle. All right. Especially at unmanned crossings like this. But when he saw the shepherd's stick go up, he actually prevented an accident by not whistling. And I was quite amazed at that, because had the sheep run around, one of them might have ended up under the train. You never know, right? So it was quite amazing that he saved the sheep's life, right? And the other time people obey crossings in fog, when you can't see the train. Because when you can't see the train in fog, sometimes you can't hear the train, right? Because the engine is not that loud, and the fog actually muffles it even more when it's not accelerating. Otherwise, it's quite loud. So people actually obey the crossing, right? So this is near Mihinpurva in Uttar Pradesh, right? And one part before I go on to the heritage section is the part on food. Okay, if you talk about India and you don't talk about food, I think there are fewer sins worse than that, right? You have to talk about food when you talk about India, right? At some stage, right? And I want to start this off with this gentleman. He's sort of my a brother from another mother, right? It's a, always a joy to talk to him. Absolutely a fantastic person, knows the history, geography, and the politics of how the railways works in that part of the world, tells me which politicians close down which lines, tells you the exact date steam locomotives start running on this line, stop running on this line. And that's his canteen at Dudhwa station, right? And if you ask him, he'll say, I was practically born in this station because I've spent my entire life here, right? And that's his father, right there, who started who started the canteen back in the 60s, right? And this gentleman has been working there. And it's this very weird demographics in some parts of India, you will notice, right? So you'll see like a higher concentration of Sikhs on this line, although it's like a few hundred, I think like 500, 600 kilometers from Punjab or anywhere near Punjab. But there are a lot of Sikhs living here in a place called Tikunya, which is about 20, 30 kilometers from here, right? And his name is Sanjay, by the way. This Mr. Sanjay was the one who told me that, when India got partitioned with Pakistan, a lot of Pakistani Sikhs were actually settled at Tikunya, a remote village in Uttar Pradesh, and they were given a token worth 100 rupees with which they could start any profession they wanted, and most of them chose agriculture, right? So there's an unusually high concentration of Sikhs in this area, just like there are unusually high concentration of Bengalis in a place called Pilibhit, in a place called Mala near Pilibhit, because they were East Pakistan refugees, right? Bangladeshi refugees who came to live in Uttar Pradesh. Indira Gandhi actually allocated a place of land for them in Uttar Pradesh. So you come across these hamlets of different communities, like you never even would have thought of there being a big sizable community of Sikhs in such a far off place, right? But food and drink is very important. Okay, we need our food, and this line is 200 kilometers long with very few food options. All right, so at stations, yes, there are vendors, right? Then at Kalakund, there are ladies that sell papad, fried black lentil fritters. I think that would be the most accurate English description, right? Fried black lentil fritters, what are called papadams in South India, papad in North India, and it's laced with chili. All right. So here's how this transaction works. It's 5 rupees a piece, but the lady doesn't have change very often. So what she will do is she will say, I'll give you one, but then when you give her a 10 rupee note, she will put 2 in your hand and run away. Okay, so she's technically not cheating you. All right, she's not really cheating, but if she'd given you 5, if she had given you 1 and then taken 10 rupees and ran away, she's cheating you, right? She charged you more, but she will give you 2 and she'll run away because she doesn't have change. All right, and the train might leave, so you don't want to run after this lady for 5 rupees or something like that. So you'll be like, resign yourself to your fate. I experienced this firsthand in front of my passenger, right? Like my passenger was sitting in front of me, and he did exactly that happen to him. All right, so he said that I only want 1, I don't want 2, and she said, okay, give me 5 rupees. He gave her a 10 rupee note. He put 2 in her hand. She ran away. Okay, so I'm pretty sure if she had just given 1, she probably couldn't sleep at night. It's like, oh god, I cheated someone or something like that. That's why she gave 2, right? So This coach, by the way, just going by what I said earlier, this coach was built in 1992. All right, it's really, really old. All right, so the other picture, which I'm not very happy with, are the custard apple vendors at Kalakun, right? So this lady is holding a custard apple. You can see here. I should have taken a better shot. I should have gotten closer. So this is my fault. Sorry about that. But I did manage to get a picture of her. And this lady is, oh gosh, she has $1 million smile. Okay. And what she does is the custard apples just grow above her. In fact, this is the shadow of the custard apple tree, if I'm not wrong. Okay. So the kid goes up, or the grandson goes up and picks up the custard apple, and she sells them at like 2 for 5 rupees or 3 for 10 rupees or something like that. Okay. And they're insanely sweet. Okay. Not very fleshy, but very, very sweet. Okay. Hand pumps are still a thing on the Indian railways, especially on the meter gauge lines. You don't have taps, you have to pump water. All right. And that's why it's really a race against time, because the pump is not located throughout the station. It's like located at one corner of the station. And if you're coming from the first coach, you can see the stress in the person when he's actually pressing the thing hard and waiting for the water to come out, because he wants to make sure he can run back to his coach before the train leaves, right? And these trains are not vestibuled. What do I mean is that you can't walk from one coach to another from within the train. You have to come out, right? So if you are very far from the water tap, you have to make sure you can run back to your coach so that you can catch up with your friends. Otherwise, you can't walk through the train. All right. So it's actually quite a challenge. And you can see many people sprinting and darting across between the water tap and the train. Right. And then there are mobile vendors, right? Peanut vendors, black currant vendors, right? This is in Rajasthan. Please head here in the month of June. Lots of black currants, super sweet black currants that are served in black currant leaves. I think in some other leaves, I don't know. All right. 10 rupees for that whole bundle. And you can watch your mouth turn purple. Okay, it's absolutely fantastic. This is between Kamli Ghat and Fulad, as well as Kamli Ghat and Devgarh. All right, this gentleman boards at Kamli Ghat with all the black currant. So please do it. Okay, if you get time, it's fantastic. Okay, and another shot that didn't quite work out, Mr. Laduji. This is the tea vendor at Kamli Ghat station, and I asked him to, pass me a cup of tea, but by the time I took the picture, he ran away. So this was not a very fantastic shot. Okay. Yes, so he's waving bye-bye, right? A couple of more pictures, and then just one more quick story before I go to the heritage part, right? Kids in the Narmada River near Omkareshwar actually benefit from the railways in a very strange way. Okay, when the train goes over Narmada River, that's the train, right? It's the longest meter gauge bridge in India as of now, 800 meters long. Passengers throw coins into the river when they offer prayers to Omkareshwar, one of the Shiva's holy spots, right? Abodes of Shiva, right? 12 Jyotirlingas, right? So the kids actually have a weapon in hand, like a magnet. And what they do is that they go and pick up these coins after the train passes, right? So they jump into the river and they pick up these coins, and they can buy sweets on the weekend. Okay. And when the magnet has taken enough, you can't put any more coins. What do? They put the coins in the mouth, and they carry on using the magnet to get even more coins. All right. So at the end of the day, it's a handful of coins. Okay. It's quite a lot of coins from a few trains that crisscross the bridge. Okay. So that's one way to make a living. Okay. And the last section, this is the heritage section. And I was speaking to one of the engine drivers who said, well, you know what, this is a waste of a railway line, right? And he was actually referring to the Nilgiri mountain line, right? Okay, mountain railway. This picture tells you how you shouldn't be taking pictures. If you can find a train, 2 points to you, right? So it passes through very dense jungle. It's right here in the center, right? Okay, it passes through very dense jungle. So just to give you an idea of how dense the jungle is and how small the train is, I took this picture, right? So please don't take pictures like this. It's going to make people like go crazy, right? Okay, but they are fantastic machines, all right? They're Swiss-built Winterthur locomotives that run on steam, but the steam is not powered by coal. It's powered by furnace oil. Right. So what I did was I took a couple of pictures, I scanned them digitally, black and white photos, and then I colored them on Adobe Lightroom. All right. Just to give it a sort of a different feel to it. All right. So this is the bridge number 25 after Kallar. Right. And even the tea estates are pictured. You can see why this line got the heritage status. It's very picturesque. Even the human environments are very beautiful, very manicured tea lawns. Lever cabins, elevated lever cabins, the other one besides Jetal sir that's still surviving, right? Workshops that tend to the steam locomotives, right? Fantastic staff, right? This is the engine driver. His name is Mr. Jairaj, and he says he prefers coal locomotives because when you work all throughout the journey, you don't feel the stress, right? And he says now he's just standing and melting in the heat. He doesn't like this locomotive very much. He prefers the older coal-fired locomotives, right? And that's the last section, all right? Sorry about the delay. I know it went a bit longer. This is going to be short, don't worry, okay? One of the questions I ask myself way too often was one that was given to me by my Malaysian friend Mahin, and that's what am I doing with my life? Okay, this project could have finished in 2 years had I just shot on a digital camera. Okay, not everything is my own fault, but a fair bit of it is my fault, and I'll perfectly take responsibility for it. No problems at all, right? The first one was not my fault. Okay, so that picture you saw of the gentleman, bringing the train in with a flaming torch was supposed to be done with this, right? On film. And I got the shot perfectly, okay? But that patch of film had a manufacturing defect. It looks like it's snowing, doesn't it? All these white patches. There was a manufacturing defect on the film, and I had to go back the next year, right? I went back the next year. I got the shot, but the trains didn't have the lights switched on, so I couldn't see the motion blur of the lights. So what do? You go back a few months later, right? And that time I bought my digital camera with me and I said, look, even if I don't get this on film, at least let me get it on digital. So I got it on digital and then finally got it on film as well with the signal lowered. So that's 5 points to me for that, right? With the semaphore lowered, right? So the other shot was this shot, all right? So people said, why don't you shoot the digital and film camera together? Don't ever do that. You know why? You'll only get the shot on one camera. You'll miss it in one. I got it on the digital. The film one, I shot too early. All right. So the objective is to get the train coming out of the fog in winter. Right. So this was in like December 2018, I think. Right. I got the shot and the film one, I couldn't because I was handling two cameras. I kind of missed the shot on the film camera. So I came back the next year. And what happened? The fog became so thick, I couldn't see the train. You can, like if you really look hard enough, you will see the train here. This is the locomotive, right? So I thought, okay, fine, let's come back a few months later. And then the third visit, the train got delayed by 2 hours, so there was no more fog. And I ended up in a situation where you can see there are two locomotives, right? Because one of them broke down at the station. So they had to bring another locomotive, which took another hour. By the time it got to me, it was almost 2 hours late. I missed the shot. So I still haven't gotten the shot of the train coming out from the fog. And that's when I asked myself, what am I doing with my life? Okay. And some of it is entirely my own doing. When loading film, I ended up pressing against it. So I ended up creating a kink smack in the center of the frame, destroying the photo. All right. So that whole photo got ruined because of this huge kink. When I was loading film, I got a bit too rushed. All right. When I was loading film into the reel for developing. Okay. So light leaks, please check your cameras if they are working before you travel. It's very simple advice, but very useful advice. I didn't check my camera. I did baptism by fire and the camera was leaking light and that's one shot gone. This water is 8 degrees Celsius, by the way. And you see there's a man who's not wearing a shirt who actually goes into the water at neck level when he brings the net inside. This would have been a pretty interesting shot, but it was not to be. Okay. So, yeah, very sorry about this. Gosh, it took a lot longer than I thought. And that's basically the gist of it. I ended with what am I doing with my life? So, yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
Fascinating, Nanda. This is amazing. Quite a storyteller. I'm sure everybody has been spellbound by the pictures and by the stories that went along with it. So we'll take a few questions. Madhu Kakde asks, how long did this unfinished project take? Did you do this because of your passion for trains or was it sponsored?
Oh, wow. I really wish I could get sponsored for this. I really, really wish I could get sponsored for this. But no, it's not. It started off as a labor of love, driven by the wheels of determination. Now it has been stopped by the rust of resignation. Right? Oh, okay. To make it less dystopian, how long did this take? I started in November 2016. all right? And it's still not done yet because there's still the writing part, there's still the coloring part, there's still the printing part. So I don't know when it's going to finish, but I started it in November 2016, right? Passion for trains for sure. I lived in a place called Baikala in Bombay, where the Central Railways yard where they cleaned the trains and everything was right outside my house. I was on the 6th floor. I could look down and I used to see these red colored trains, maroon colored trains pass by my house. And that's where I got fascinated with the maroon trains. All right. Just to let you know, the Deccan Queen is the most nicely colored train on the Central Railway. It's like this blue, pink, blue, red, white color. But I like the maroon trains more because they went to further places, right? And when I came to Singapore, 4 years later, when I went back to India to take a train, I realized all the maroon trains had gone. And then a few years later, I discovered that there are still maroon trains running on the meter gauge meter gauge networks. And that's when I hunted down the meter gauge network. So it's definitely passion for trains. I really wish it could have been sponsored. It's a bit too late to sponsor now. I already squandered enough money into this. So, but yeah, it's not sponsored. I'm sorry. I actually pay the railway for the permits, by the way, just to let you know. Yeah.
Okay. I think that is a good question, which
yeah, that question. Did you just buy platform tickets or real journey tickets and photography? Oh, by the way, if you get a photography permit, you are required to buy train tickets for all your journeys. The railway does not pay for the tickets. Okay, so all the journey tickets I paid. At the platform, I'm supposed to buy a platform ticket. But any station master at these remote stations, they will ask you, "Are you stupid?" And I'll be, well, you know what the permit says, and they're like, "Don't be stupid. You come into my office first. I want to speak to you." Right. And they won't let me buy a platform ticket. So yeah, I didn't buy a platform. I'll come clean. I don't know. I mean, this is being recorded. It's going to be preserved for posterity, and the railways is probably going to come after me and find me. But no, I didn't buy platform tickets because a lot of station masters wouldn't even sell me a platform ticket. All right. The only reason they'll sell me a train ticket is because they can't guarantee the ticket not being checked at the other station. That's why they will sell you a ticket. So yeah, and they will never let me queue for a ticket. They'll say, "No, family members don't queue they come to my office to buy the ticket." So yeah.
So I think this is an interesting question. How did you come to terms to go to a risky area alone with costly gear?
Well, the bag that I lost was really costly, but it had 4 cameras inside. One of them was a Hasselblad. But now I don't have costly gear anymore. That's one. But actually, the thing is, I think presence of mind, situational awareness is very important. I think one of the lessons I learned, one of the most important lessons was even in a second AC or a first AC compartment, don't take sleep for granted. All right. Sleep came at a price for me. It was in a second AC compartment that my bag got stolen. Right. So always hug your camera bag to sleep. That's one. Or use your camera bag as a headrest or a footrest. That's another one. Okay. So your bigger backpack that has all the clothes and everything that goes under the seat. That's fine. Okay. And I still haven't come to terms with the loss of the bag, by the way. All right. So when I travel, I think having presence of mind is very good. Especially it helps if you have a railway permit, because what happens is you can actually talk to the station master who tells you what you should and shouldn't do, especially in places with wildlife. All right, take their word for it. Like they say, don't walk to the point alone. Yeah, it's only 300 meters from the station, but don't walk into the jungle alone. Just don't do it. One, you will make him feel comfortable. Two, you'll be saving yourself some trouble. All right. So sometimes don't be gung ho. Don't be stupid. All right. When the station master says there are tigers in this place, take his word for it. Take his word for it. Chances are it's true lah. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I communicate a lot with the station staff and make sure that they know clearly what I'm doing. And if the station staff has a RPF, a Railway Protection Force, a GRP, I think it's called now, right? Please talk to them as well and let them know that you're doing this, so that if anybody harasses you, you at least get somebody to help you out. So yeah. So the gear, yeah, that's quite a tragedy, Lars. Yeah. So my gear is not that expensive now.
Nanda, will take a couple of questions more and we'll close.
Sure.
Yeah, Murli Santanam asks, I haven't noticed a single electric train during the show. Any reason for omitting that?
There are no electric trains running on the meter gauge lines in India anymore. The last ones ran between Tambaram and Chengalpattu, if I'm not wrong, in Tamil Nadu, right? But from Egmore, that's where the electric trains on the meter gauge last ran. After that, there's no other part of India with electric locomotives on the meter gauge lines. right? You have electric locomotives on the broad gauge lines. That's right. So yeah. And
How many kilometers?
Oh gosh. Well, if it's just for the railway lines, it should be in the thousands already, because some of the lines are 200 kilometers long. Marwar Mavli is 155 kilometers long. I've done that like 6-7 times already. So I think it's well over 2 to 3,000 kilometers already. No, in fact, much more than that. Sorry. It's probably hitting like 10,000 already, I think, because you keep doing back and forth and getting to those places by train as well. If all that counts, it's definitely over 10,000 kilometers already. So yeah, that's.
So Nanda, I have a question for you. Normally, labor of love, etc., is good, but pictures typically have to have an end use. Do you have a plan in mind, like maybe an exhibition, book, etc., etc.?
Well, I have to finish coloring the photos first, but exhibition or a book, both are currently options that I'm exploring seriously, right? It is supposed to be part of a book by right. It's supposed to be an autobiography of a dying train. Supposed to be a eulogy of a train, right? So the train basically narrates its glorious history and tells, these are the parts of the country I go through, these are the people I serve, and things like that. The idea is there vaguely, but I haven't gotten around to writing it properly, because it's easier said than done. It's easier to photograph than to write, because to get for photographing, you have to be at a place physically. For writing, your mind has to be in a place, and that's extremely difficult, right? For the mind to be at the right place for you to start writing, and that's actually quite painful. So yeah, it's yeah, something in the works lah. Yeah.
Okay, so last question: how easy is it to get permission for photography from railways?
Definitely easier than it was, like, say, 10 or 15 years ago. Approach the public relations officer of that zone's railway, right? So if, for example, if you're shooting the Bombay to Pune line, you probably have to ask for Central Railway for permission. So you approach the public relations officer, write an email to him, maybe write 20 emails to him before he replies, and then you take it from there. Yeah, nowadays the information is available though, right? You have their office numbers. You can actually call them and speak to them as well. And they arrange one. You have two types of permit: a commercial permit as well as a rail fanning, like a non-commercial permit, whereby it's free of charge. But be prepared to do some work, get some stamp paper done, with your indemnity agreements and stuff like that. So it's a bit of paperwork. It takes about a couple of 3 or 4 days to finish, but it is definitely possible. Yeah.
Okay, I think we are done with the questions. Hopefully, there don't seem to be any more questions. Anant, anything you have to add?
I will add one last question.
Okay.
Okay. Wow. Films below 400 ISO, at 400 ISO, it's actually fine. It actually can go through X-ray, not a problem. But trust me, Indian airports are really good now. If you just ask them to hand inspect the films, they do it. Don't put it in your check-in bag. Bring it in your carry-on bag. At the security counter where they actually put the bags to the X-ray before you board, just tell them that these are photographic films you wanted hand inspected. At least in the major airports, they take care of it. But after that, to get to the local airports, I normally don't take the flight. I take the train. Even if it means 36 hours in a train, I just do it, because then I don't have to go through another round of X-ray. Though, in all fairness, though, X-ray doesn't affect film as much as people think it does, right? So up to 400 ISO, you're okay. But the 3200 ISOs, the 3200 ISOs, you start seeing this wave pattern appearing on your films after a while. So be careful with that. About 2 or 3 X-rays is the max it can do. All right. So preferably have your films hand inspected. In Singapore, it's not a problem at all. Most people are willing to do it. In Bombay, Delhi, Madras, and Calcutta, I've managed to get them hand inspect. So the 4 metro cities, no problems as well. And Bangalore as well, actually. I've gotten it hand inspected in Bangalore as well. So yeah, you should be fine. Wow.
So we have brought up your Nanda's Instagram handle on the screen. So all the viewers are requested to go and follow him on Instagram. He has some amazing work put up on his Instagram page. And we can see a stream of fantastic comments on YouTube as well as Facebook. So it is definitely overwhelming. So I request Nanda to go through the comments once you get free.
Sure. Thanks a lot for your support. I am just glad you all managed to stay this long. It's 10:23 here. So yeah, gosh, wow. Thanks so much.
Yeah, we've established one thing, Nanda. You're not boring, so it's okay. You kept us entertained.
I should now work on the grumpy part now, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
but
you should probably add not so grumpy old man. So
oh wow! But I would really like to take the opportunity to thank YPS as well, Youth Photography Society. I mean, I'm not a youth by any measure, but you still invited me. I'm really thankful for that, and I'm also thankful to Yogesh because you're the one who kickstarted this. This would not have happened. You asked me this question about a year back, and then, like, lo and behold, here we are. Looking at each other on the screen and talking away. And I would really like to thank Anant as well for moderating this, and all. Hardik for. I mean, you guys have a tough job, right? I just have to talk. You have to actually monitor the comment section, make sure that the questions get put up and all that. Wow, really, thanks a lot. I'm really appreciative for what
Just
you've
want
done.
to add one point. Youth Photographic Society is basically for those who are youth at heart, not necessarily with respect to age. So
Okay.
you have to take back that comment.
Oh wow. Okay. Interesting. Yes, that's right. Okay. Wow.
So thank you so much, Nanda. It was really a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Before
Thank you
we
so much.
conclude our presentation, I have a few more announcements to make. So just give me a second. Okay, so next Saturday, we have a session exclusively for YPS members by Mr. Rohinton Mehta. He is fondly called as Uncle Ronnie. With 35 years of experience in the art and science of photography, he is like a living encyclopedia. So it is going to be a great session. So YPS members are requested to be a part of it and make best use of this session. So, and once again, YPS, the All India Digital Salon is up and live. So visit salon.ypsbengaluru.in for participation. And once again, I emphasize this, this time it is free for participation for all. So submit your best images across the 4 categories that we have in this salon. That's it. So next Sunday, keep watching this YPS website so that you get update on the golden hour session that we will have next Sunday. And we have put up the YPS correspondence number once again, 9513 YPS BLR, 9513 977 257. Here's the QR code once again. If you scan this with your phone, then it will take you directly to the YPS membership form so that you can become a member right away. So you can also visit ypsbengaluru.com. So that's our website. Thank you so much for all the viewers who joined today. And thanks once again, Nanda and Yogesh, for the wonderful presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day. And everyone, please be safe, stay at home, and wishing you and your family best of health and safety. Thank you so much.